Importantly, he had successfully reclaimed Lucent City, was granted the title of Baron of the Kingdom, and changed his surname to Pendragon. Leon's gaze lingered on the name Pendragon for a long time. A rare soft smile appeared at the corner of his usually stern face. Pendragon. He repeated the new surname softly, his voice low and emotionless. Humph, he hummed quietly, carefully folding the letter and placing it in the top drawer of his desk. Well, he's grown up. The light outside fell on his resolute profile. His usually tightly furrowed brow seemed to relax slightly at this moment. In the office of the kingdom's prime minister, the Marquis of Tuscany gently placed a letter from Thorn City in the western border on Duke Federico Laroche's large desk. He wore a slight smile and said, "My lord, I never expected that the development order you pushed to stir the stagnant waters of the western border would actually bear such unexpected fruit through Ely Pendragon." Duke Federico picked up the letter and quickly read through Lucius's report. His focus was on the details of Ely defeating the Grom rebels and recapturing Lucerne City. His face, as sharp and cold as a chiseled blade, showed no change in expression. Taking a city defended by nearly 1,000 people. Federico put down the letter, speaking plainly without praise or criticism. That is truly a brave and capable person. Nearly 1,000? The Marquis of Tuscany's smile froze, and for the first time, real surprise appeared in his eyes. How is that possible? Lucius's letter did not detail the specific battles, only the results. Now, he was learning about the enemy's size from the Duke himself. Facing nearly 1,000 rebels with the modest strength of the Knights of the Expansion and winning. This achievement far exceeded his expectations. Perhaps luck was on his side, but Ely Pendragon is definitely not just lucky. Federico ignored Tuscany's shock and thought about a broader plan. He comes from the Black family. Though he changed his name, his bloodline and connections remain. He raised his head, his gaze sharp as an eagle's. His father, Marquis Leon Black, might be useful to us. Tuscany immediately understood the Duke's intention. His brow furrowed as he quickly analyzed. The noble circles of the royal domain tend to stick together and are very exclusive, like a solid wall. Leon Black is stubborn. Trying to sway him to side with us against other noble factions will be very difficult. A solid wall? Federico's lips curled into a cold, slightly mocking smile. The famous Black Wind Knight of the Black family. Gordon Black. He died in the northern border years ago, and it was quite suspicious. Tuscany's pupils suddenly shrank. Are you suggesting Gordon's death? The seeds of hatred, once planted, only need the right time and trigger. Leon Black is not as perfect as he seems on the surface. His feelings for his older brother Gordon and his doubts about Gordon's death might be the key points we can use to turn the situation around. Toss. In your name, help me arrange a meeting with Marquis Leon Black. Find a less noticeable place and time. Just say it's about old matters related to Sir Gordon Black. This solid achievement and noble title gave everyone great confidence and courage. Ely raised his hand to quiet the discussion. Sabuta's hostility is undeniable, backed by the powerful Medici family from the southern border, which should not be underestimated. Additionally, a greater threat still lurks in the western border, the remnants of the Free City Alliance. He looked around at everyone. To face these two threats, relying only on Black leader and Lucerne City is not enough. Therefore, on the way back, I have officially formed alliances with Griffin Easton of Easton Territory, Baron Hans Clef of Cleve Territory, and Amelia Frost of Frost Territory. As soon as he finished, the meeting hall fell silent for a moment, then erupted with discussion. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. I have agreed with them to share intelligence, exchange resources, and support each other militarily. In the future, whether it's Sabuta's revenge or attacks from the remnants of the Federation army, we will face them together. Yes, sir. Everyone responded in unison. The meeting moved into the regular reporting phase. Old John was the first to stand up. He spread out a hand-drawn sheepskin map, pointing to several key locations in the valley. Sir, following your instructions, the new city wall at Black Leader has been finally decided and construction has begun. Using the natural barriers of the mountain ridges on both sides, we have set up 3 main city gates and preliminary outposts here, here, and here. The first batch of stones and timber has started being transported, and the foundation excavation is underway. Good. Ely's eyes showed a hint of approval. How is the progress? If we have enough workers, the basic walls and main city gates can be roughly completed within 2 months, Old John replied confidently. We will have enough workers, Eli said, turning his gaze to others. The mine is operating normally. Master Glenn is leading us to solve the difficulties in mining, Leon reported. Master Glenn hummed in acknowledgement. Listening to the clear reports from everyone in charge, Eli felt reassured. The territory's machinery was still running efficiently while he was away. A rare relaxed smile appeared on his face. Thank you all. The success of Black Leader today is thanks to everyone's hard work. This meeting is adjourned. Yes, sir. Everyone stood up, saluted, and left one after another. The meeting hall suddenly was left with only Ely and Ella, who sat quietly beside him. The tense nerves relaxed, and the fatigue from days of travel quietly washed over him. Ely looked at Ella's gentle, calm face and felt a warm feeling rise in his heart. He reached out naturally and wrapped his arms around Ella's slim waist, planning to lift her into his arms and take her back to their room to enjoy a moment of peace and comfort. Her ears were red. Ely, now without Ella in his arms, sighed helplessly and asked irritably, "What's wrong now?" Est finally saw the scene inside the hall clearly, shrank his neck in realization, but remembering the important matter, he immediately spoke. The merchants have arrived. The North Trade Guild. They brought many carts and are waiting just outside the camp. Ely rubbed his forehead, suppressing some irritation. He adjusted his robes and sat back in his main seat. Bring them in. Yes, Est exclaimed happily and hurried out. Soon, he returned with 2 people. The leader was about 40 years old, slightly overweight, wearing a fine silk robe, with a professional smile on his face. But in his sharp eyes, there was a subtle, almost unnoticed, look of scrutiny. Following behind him was a middle-aged man with a similar merchant aura, Honorable Baron Pendragon. Good day. The plump merchant bowed deeply as he entered, his posture very respectful, and his voice loud. I am Karen, head of the North Trade Guild's Western branch, responsible for the slave trade. This is my colleague, Pierre, who handles large grain transactions. Pierre also quickly bowed in greeting. Both men were very respectful, but Ely keenly noticed a flicker of calculation in Karen's eyes. Clearly, this merchant from the Grand Guild was assessing the young baron, who seemed too young and whose territory didn't look particularly prosperous. There are doubts about its purchasing power and reputation. Eli was not concerned and directly got to the main point. Manager Karen, how many people have you brought? Karen's smile remained the same. Greetings, noble sir. We have responded to your request by gathering high-quality supplies from our rear base, a total of 800 young and healthy slaves. They are strong workers. Considering your possible needs, and that we also need to explore other locations, the amount brought this time is indeed larger than usual. He spoke with some explanation and caution, as if worried Eli might think it was too much. 800? Eli lightly tapped his fingers on the table. Good. I want all of them. All of them? Karen's perfect professional smile froze instantly, eyes wide in disbelief. Pierre behind him also looked up suddenly, equally stunned. 800 slaves. That's not just 800 carrots. Even nobles rarely buy so many at once. Karen swallowed hard, doubting if he heard correctly. Sir, you're not joking, are you? 800. Do I look like I'm joking? Eli said calmly. Give me a price. Karen's heart pounded wildly, a mix of huge excitement and a little panic flooding him. He forced himself to stay calm, his mind racing to calculate costs and profits, sweat starting to appear on his forehead. Noble sir, 800 high-quality young slaves. Based on current market prices, about 7 silver coins each, totaling 560 gold coins. But since you are a noble baron and this is a large deal, I am willing to offer you the best price, 520. No, 500 gold coins. What do you think? He offered what he thought was a very sincere low price. Eli didn't immediately respond, but looked at Pierre, who was also stunned. Manager Pierre, what about your grain supplies? Give me a price. I want all of it. Pierre felt a buzzing in his head, his legs weak, almost collapsing to the ground. He brought not a small amount. It was enough to support 1,000 people for several months. All of it. What kind of concept is that? He trembled and said, Mastered, we brought the food supplies, mainly high-quality wheat and rye, and some beans. Total. Total. According to the wholesale price in Thorn City. Converted into gold coins. Around 600 gold coins. When he mentioned this astronomical number, he felt like he was dreaming himself. After hearing their offers, Ely leaned back slightly in his chair, interlaced his fingers on the table, and showed no expression on his face. He was silent for a few seconds. This brief silence made Karen and Pierre feel nervous, their palms sweating with anxiety. Finally, Ely spoke calmly. 500 slaves, 600 food supplies, total 1,100 gold coins. He paused, then looked at the two anxious businessmen. Remove the small change. 1,000 gold coins exactly, Karen and Pierre gasped. Although they lost 100 gold coins in change, the total was still so large it made their heads spin. A wave of huge joy instantly overwhelmed all doubts and hesitation. Deal. Deal. Karen almost shouted, his voice trembling, afraid Ely might change his mind. Pierre nodded desperately, as if pecking like a chick, no longer showing any contempt from before. All that remained was deep respect for the benefactor. Esther. Ely looked at the young butler standing nearby. Handle the follow-up delivery matters. You and old John are fully responsible for coordinating. Count the people and the amount of food. Check the quality. Then take the two supervisors to the warehouse to get the gold coins from Mr. Sebastian. Yes, young master, Esther responded loudly. Ely looked back at Karen and Pierre. I am very satisfied with the efficiency of the North Trade Guild. I hope we can maintain this pleasant cooperation in the future. Karen and Pierre were so excited they almost kneeled to thank this benefactor, bowing nearly 90 degrees. Certainly, certainly. It is the greatest honor for the North Trade Guild to serve the Lord. We will do our best to serve you. Always ready to answer your call. With the deal made, the two businessmen, overwhelmed with joy, gratefully followed Esther out of the meeting hall. The hall returned to silence. Ely took a long, deep breath. He felt a little tired, but mostly he felt steady about the future. He stood up and looked again at Ella, who was blushing and secretly watching him. A gentle smile appeared on his face. Now, he said, holding out his hand to Ella, no one will bother us. Early in the morning, Ely was awakened by a soft, steady tapping sound. It wasn't a horn or voices, but rain. He opened his eyes. The room was dimly lit. Outside the window, the sky was gray and low. Fine rain formed an endless web, covering the entire Black Collar Valley. Raindrops fell on the freshly turned soil, on the wooden roof, and among the thick branches of the distant forest, creating a dull, vast, splashing sound. It seemed everything was hiding in this rain, leaving only the most basic white noise of nature. Ely sat up and leaned against the head of the bed. Ella, who had been taken off him and was sleeping peacefully beside him, breathed evenly. He turned his head to look outside. His eyes passed through the rain curtain and focused on the blurry outline of the night song forest in the distance. A rare sense of peace surrounded him. The noise from days of travel, scheming, and trading seemed to be washed away by the rain. He closed his eyes, clearing away lingering sleepiness and thoughts, and let his mind sink into his brain. A silent blue light screen appeared. A deep purple beam of light streaked across his view like a shooting star. Purple. Deep inside the night song forest, many wild animals are gathering in the core area, restless. Gathering deep in the forest? Ely wondered. On a rainy day, animals usually find shelter separately. Such a large, unusual gathering was strange. He frowned, but didn't see any clear threat in the information, so he set aside his doubts for now. He quietly got out of bed without waking Ella, quickly dressed in his armor and cloak suitable for action. He opened the door, and the cool, damp wind mixed with the sound of rain hit him. He didn't bring an umbrella and walked straight into the thick rain. The cold rain on his face made him feel more awake. He moved steadily, crossing the muddy camp road toward the edge of the camp, where a new large wooden shelter had been built to house the new slaves. At this moment, it held 800 unfamiliar faces who had arrived just yesterday. Ely looked at the wooden shelter area that could hold enough slaves and sighed in relief. At least, there was a place to hide from the rain for now. At the entrance of the shelter, the slave overseer URU was shouting loudly, directing some older slaves to maintain order and organizing new arrivals to line up for breakfast. He was short and sturdy, with dark skin, and his face showed the sharpness and seriousness that came from dealing with the lower classes for many years. Seeing the figure with white hair walking through the rain, Yu shivered. His stern expression immediately changed to one of deep respect and a hint of panic. He hurried forward. "Sir, why are you here in person?" Yu's voice was full of surprise and nervousness. He bowed very low, and rainwater dripped from the edge of his hat. "This place is dirty and messy. Just tell me if you need anything." "Come and take a look," Eli said calmly, glancing over the somewhat crowded but still orderly scene inside the shelter. "Have the new arrivals been settled?" "Yes, sir. They've all been settled," Yu answered quickly, speaking fast. According to the old rules, 800 people were divided into 8 small teams, each with 100 people, and temporary team leaders had been appointed. Including the previous ones, there were now 17 slave teams in the camp. Most of the order was maintained, but the newcomers were still a bit confused and needed time to get used to the rules. Eli nodded and looked at the long line inside the shelter. At the end of the line, large pots were boiling with thin porridge, and rough black bread was piled in baskets nearby. The slaves stood silently in line, most with blank, numb, or slightly anxious expressions about the future. The air was filled with the smell of damp earth mixed with the aroma of food. "I'm hungry," Eli suddenly said. His voice was quiet, but made Yu and a few nearby slaves stop in surprise. Yu thought he had heard wrong and stammered, "A lord? You mean?" "Go and get me a portion," Eli said, still watching the line for food. "Just like theirs." Yu was completely stunned, his mouth open wide enough to fit an egg. To give the noble baron lord bread and porridge meant for slaves? This was unheard of. He stood in place, feeling helpless, his face turning red as if Eli was asking him to do something very wrong. "Go quickly," Eli's voice carried a firm tone. Yu shivered, and, no longer hesitating, hurried to the food line, pushed to the front, and whispered a few urgent words to the old slave in charge of distributing food. The old slave was stunned and hurriedly filled a large bowl with a nearly grainless porridge. He then carefully selected a piece of black bread that didn't look too hard and handed it to Yu. Yu cupped the bowl and bread with both hands, as if holding a rare treasure or a hot yam. He quickly returned to Eli's side, his voice trembling with emotion. "Lord, sir, this is—" Eli didn't speak. He reached out and took the rough wooden bowl and the hard black bread. He moved to a window in the wooden shelter, turned his back to the crowd inside, and faced the pouring rain outside. He stood there, holding the bowl in one hand and the bread in the other. Like an ordinary soldier or farmer, he ate silently, one spoonful of porridge, one piece of hard bread, while watching the rain. Yu stood a few steps behind him, afraid to get too close or to leave. He watched the young, overly white-haired lord straight back, rain soaking his cloak and outlining his slightly thin shoulders. Suddenly, a strange feeling welled up in Yu's heart. Yes, their lord, beyond all his impressive status and power, was just an overly young boy. He was even younger than many children of the slaves in the shelter. But it was this young man who built this camp on the wilderness, took Lucerne City, became a baron, and yesterday bought 800 people without hesitation. He was so different, so great. Yu, who had struggled through life at the bottom, had seen many kinds of nobles and stewards, greedy, cruel, hypocritical, indifferent. But he had never seen anyone like Eli. Eli would come to this dirty, chaotic place himself, and calmly eat the same food as the slaves. Yu felt a lump in his throat, and his nose stung. He took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears. He silently thought, "I, Alu, don't have many skills and can't help the adults much. All I can do is take care of these new slaves, make sure they follow the rules, work hard, and cause fewer problems for the adults. Maybe this is the only way I can repay the adults." Eli quickly finished his simple breakfast and handed the empty bowl back to Alu, who was still standing nearby. "Good placement. You worked hard." After saying this, he turned and walked back into the dense rain, heading toward the Lord's fortress. His figure soon disappeared into the rain curtain. Ulu held the empty bowl, standing still, not moving for a long time. There was still some warmth from the porridge on the bowl's wall, comforting his rough hands. The rain stopped somewhere without him noticing. The sky was still gloomy, but the air after the rain was very fresh, carrying the damp smell of soil and plants. It made people feel much better. Eli was working in the council hall, dealing with some backlog of documents, mainly about the supply of building materials for the city wall and the initial plan for the Luzon City trading post. The sound of the wooden door opening interrupted his thoughts. Wolfgang, tall and broad, entered. His silver-gray fur was still dotted with tiny water droplets, and his icy blue wolf eyes looked unusually serious. He didn't bow or greet. He simply walked to Eli's desk. "Sir, the hunting team has returned." Eli put down his feather pen and looked up. "Any harvest?" "The new slaves need meat to supplement their diet." Wolfgang shook his head, his wolf-like lips slightly parted. "No harvest. We didn't catch a single prey, huh?" Eli frowned slightly. Wolfgang's hunting team, made up of wolf people, was experienced and had a keen sense of smell. Even after the heavy rain, they shouldn't have returned empty-handed. "Sir," Wolfgang's tone grew more serious. "It's not just that we didn't find any prey. The forest is too quiet. Quiet to the point of being strange." He paused, seeming to recall that unsettling feeling. The usual bird calls, insect chirping, the rustling of small animals. All gone. It's as if all living creatures disappeared overnight. Or they all hid away, strangely quiet. Eli repeated Wolfgang's words, a flicker of thought flashing in his blue eyes. He suddenly remembered the morning rain and the purple warning from the intelligence system. A large number of beasts are gathering in the core area, restless and uneasy. The abnormal gathering of beasts. The forest's central zone. The hunting team went deep but encountered strange silence. These two seemingly unrelated pieces of information suddenly connected in Eli's mind. Could it be that the gathering of beasts has created a vacuum in the outer areas? What are they avoiding? Or perhaps something is driving them away and gathering them into the core zone? A bad feeling, cold as a snake, quietly crawled up Eli's spine. "Wolfgang." Eli's voice suddenly became serious. "Go call Old Hardy." Immediately, Wolfgang's sturdy figure disappeared at the door shortly after, and urgent, heavy footsteps could be heard outside the council hall. The wooden door was pushed open, and Old Hardy entered, wearing a slightly old leather vest. His grayish hair still damp from the rain, his face showing a hint of confusion and hurried breath. "Lord, you called me?" Old Hardy stepped in, glancing at Eli's serious face and Wolfgang, who stood silently like a mountain. He felt a bit nervous. This kind of urgent summons usually meant trouble. "Old Hardy," Eli said directly without greeting. "Have you heard of a beast tide?" Old Hardy was stunned. His cloudy eyes first showed confusion, then he tried to recall the somewhat unfamiliar term. He frowned. "Sir, are you talking about that disaster where countless wild animals, like mad, rush into human towns and villages? In our western border area, the elders seem to call it beast disaster." "Yes, beast disaster," Eli nodded. "That's what I mean." Confirmed, Old Hardy's wrinkles deepened. He tried to remember. There is such a saying. But that was a long, long time ago, almost like a legend now. I've lived so long, traveled all over the western border, and only vaguely heard some old folks mention it before they passed away. No one has actually seen it. He paused, as if something had occurred to him, and a flash of realization crossed his eyes. "Sir, do you remember the old legends I told you about the elves of the western lands?" Eli nodded. "Yes. The ancestor of the Ralosh family, Rodrigue, betrayed and killed the elf queen, which led to the elves being banished." "Exactly." Old Hardy's voice grew serious. "The legends say that those banished elves, especially the forest elves, have the ability to communicate with all living things and even control wild animals. Because of this, natural disasters caused by animals are believed to be the most vicious curses and revenge from the surviving elves against the Ralosh family and all humans who invaded their land. Controlling animals. Elves' revenge." Wolfgang's icy blue wolf eyes flashed with a cold light. Eli remained silent, tapping his fingers on the table unconsciously. The information Hardy provided, combined with the morning's intelligence and the forest's eerie silence Wolfgang experienced, painted an unsettling picture. "What happened next?" Eli asked. "Have such disasters or animal-related calamities appeared again in the last 100 years?" Hardy shook his head firmly. "No, sir. As far as I know, nothing like that has happened in the western lands." After that legendary disaster, the elves disappeared, and the animal calamities seemed to vanish from history. If you hadn't mentioned it today, I might have forgotten about it altogether. He looked at Eli's thoughtful side profile, feeling a growing sense of unease, and quietly asked, "Sir, do you suspect?" Eli didn't answer directly. He exhaled slowly, his voice heavy and serious. "My raven saw strange gatherings of beasts deep in the forest, and Wolfgang's hunting party encountered eerie silence on the outskirts. All of this is very unusual. I have a bad feeling about it." Wolfgang immediately thought of Eli's royal blood. To him, Eli was like a king. He stepped forward suddenly, his icy blue wolf eyes fixed on Eli, and his voice was firm. "Please trust your instincts. The forest won't fall silent without reason, and the beasts won't retreat en masse without cause." Eli looked at Wolfgang's unwavering trust in his eyes and gave a helpless, bitter smile. "Trust my instincts." This sounds more like a gambler's declaration. But in this wild land full of unknowns and dangers, sometimes intuition can reach the edge of truth faster than logic. Wolfgang is right. Isla's eyes became sharp again. "No matter what, it's better to be prepared. Old Hardy, please go again. The sun hasn't set completely. Call all the leaders for an emergency meeting." "Yes, sir." Seeing that the Lord was determined, Old Hardy didn't ask more and immediately left the meeting hall. As night fell, the candle flames flickered in the meeting hall, casting shadows in the corners. The leaders who received urgent news looked serious and tense. Everyone was watching Isla, who sat at the main seat with a serious expression. This was the first time they held an emergency meeting. "Everyone," Isla said directly without wasting words, standing up. "Calling you all at this late hour because we found something very strange. We need everyone to stay alert and respond immediately." He briefly explained the situation. Wolfgang's hunting team went into the Nightsong Forest and encountered strange silence, with nothing found. He also added information from Old John about the legend of a beast disaster in the Western Lands. Beast disaster. Oh my! A legendary beast disaster. Swarm of wild animals. Then, the forest core. Beast gathering. The outskirts silent. The gasps of shock kept coming. Even Captain Buck and Scholar Alva, usually calm, looked serious and incredulous. Outside the Black Cloak camp, there was only a wooden fence. If a beast horde of that scale really attacked, the consequences would be terrible. While everyone was uncertain and doubtful, the new slave affairs officer, Vic, stood up from the front seat. He looked to be in his 30s, with dark skin. "Lord," Vic's voice carried a southern accent, drawing everyone's attention. "About the beast disaster, or call it a beast tide, we in the southern forest do have some records, though not as ancient or mysterious as the legends from the Western Lands. But it has happened a few times, the most recent about 30 or 40 years ago." He paused and said, "The beast tides in the southern region usually happen because of forest fires, floods, or some powerful predators expanding their territory, forcing many animals to lose their homes or feel deadly threats, which causes them to attack human settlements in groups. The sizes vary, but each time, there is bloodshed and destruction." His words added a harsh reality to the vague legends. Eli listened carefully and nodded. "Thank you for the information, Lord Vic. Whether it's an ancient curse or a real disaster, one thing is common. Both are devastating to settlements that lack strong defenses." He looked at everyone present, speaking firmly and confidently. "To be prepared and for the long-term growth of our territory, I have decided to expand the army immediately." He raised 3 fingers. "Starting with the current 150 regular soldiers, we will recruit 300 new soldiers." 300? The number caused more quiet discussions among the crowd. Old John was the first to stand up. The usually gentle old craftsman now looked serious. "Sir, expanding the army is urgent. I support it. Black territory really has the ability now." He looked at Hardy, who was in charge of the granary. "Hardy, what do you say?" Hardy quickly responded, "Yes, sir. Old John is right. The large amount of grain we just bought from the North Trade Guild has been stored, and our fishing harvest has been good recently. There is no problem supporting 300 new soldiers' food for the short term. It can last until the next harvest season. Food supplies are the foundation of expanding the army." Other officials nodded in agreement. Master Glenn also said confidently, It's time to expand the army. Without city walls or enough soldiers to defend, if beasts or other things rush in, all the hard work we've done to build this place could be destroyed overnight. Captain Buck's eyes sharpened. I will personally oversee recruiting and training the new soldiers. We need to become combat ready quickly. Clark also spoke up, rare for him. Count me in. I can help train the new soldiers too. Although Esther, Leon, Alva the scholar, and others didn't speak directly, their eyes showed support for the Lord's decision and alertness to potential threats. Without strong city walls, a powerful army is their only shield and sword. Good. Ilai looked at his united and determined followers, feeling a bit more at ease. Since no one objects, let's decide. Increase the army by 300. He turned his gaze to Buck and Wolfgang. Captain Buck, Wolfgang, you two will be responsible for recruiting, selecting, and initial training of new soldiers. Buck will oversee, Wolfgang will assist, especially focusing on discipline and basic combat skills. Understood. Buck and Wolfgang responded in unison. No problem, Clark agreed. Finally, Ilai looked at Old John and Hardy. Old John, construction of the walls must continue. Your priority is to manage manpower allocation. Yes, sir, the two replied together. Hardy, make sure food supplies are accurate, ensuring both military needs and civilian needs are met. Yes, sir, they answered. Everyone, Ilai's voice was firm, time is tight. Tomorrow morning, the recruitment point will be set up immediately. Meeting adjourned. As the candle flames flickered, everyone quickly stood up with a sense of urgency, filing out to their respective responsibilities. The next morning, after the rain, the air at the black-collar camp was especially fresh. In the small square at the center of the camp, nearly 1,000 villagers gathered. The newly arrived 800 slaves, confused and cautious, mixed with the original villagers, forming a silent, large crowd. Ilai stood on a wooden platform, his white hair shining in the morning light. He had no unnecessary words. Everyone, for the development of the territory, defense is the foundation. To deal with potential threats and protect our home, Black Collar will recruit 300 new soldiers starting today. Those who join the army will receive better pay and food. Anyone who makes meritorious deeds will be promoted to free citizen and granted land and houses. As he finished speaking, the crowd's reactions split instantly. The old slaves who had lived in Black Collar for months and had grown accustomed to Ilai's way of rule showed uncontrollable joy on their faces. Join the army. I want to join. Good food. I can make meritorious deeds and become a free citizen. This is a great opportunity. Count me in. Sir, count me in. Having experienced the hunger and hardship of slavery, they knew what joining the black-collar army meant: better food and stable income. More importantly, there is a clear and reachable path to freedom and dignity. They waved their arms excitedly, pushing forward, eager to stamp their mark on the list. However, the 800 new slaves who arrived yesterday reacted very differently. Most of them came from harsher environments and had deep fears and distrust of words like Lord and soldier. Join the army? Fight. Isn't that just sending us to die? What's the use of eating well? We might lose our lives. This Lord seems kind, gives us food. But when it comes to fighting and risking our lives, sigh, there's no way to avoid it. They whispered among themselves, their voices low, faces full of fear and numb acceptance. They looked at the passionate old slaves nearby, their eyes full of confusion. Suddenly, Ilai's voice rose sharply, silencing the noisy square. I know what you're thinking, that this is just pushing you out to be cannon fodder? His gaze stayed on the uneasy faces of the new slaves. Black-lead soldiers aren't here to die for nothing. Their swords point at the wolves eyeing our homeland, enemies trying to drag us back into chaos. Their shields protect the land beneath your feet, the houses you built with your own hands. They protect the food in your bowls, the peace of your loved ones and children. Joining the army isn't about defending some vague glory of the Lord, but about protecting your hard-won right to survive. It's about the bed you can rest on after a day's work. Black-lead is ours. It's not someone's private property. It needs each of us to pick up weapons and defend it. Tell me. He suddenly raised his right arm. Are you willing to pick up your weapons, stand shoulder to shoulder with me, and use your courage and strength to create a safe future for yourselves and your families? After a brief silence, fight for a future. Stand together. Protect our homeland. The roar of the crowd burst out like a mighty wave. This time, not only the old slaves, but many of the new slaves' fears and numbness were ignited and shaken by this declaration. They may not fully understand, but they heard and understood the message. Protect the home, protect the food, and protect the children. Eli lowered his arm and spoke calmly again. Recruitment is handled entirely by Captain Buck and Lord Wolfgang. Those who meet the requirements, please sign up enthusiastically. After speaking, he didn't stay any longer. He turned and confidently walked down the wooden platform. The next steps, screening, registration, and organizing the troops, were Buck and their team's expertise. However, just a few steps after he left the platform, a small figure rushed out from the crowd and hugged his leg. It was the young boy who had once stolen food out of hunger, but was forgiven by Eli, and whose food policies had been adjusted. He looked up with a flushed face from running and excitement, his dirty little hands clutching tightly to Eli's leather armor. Sir, Lord, please let me become your soldier. I want to protect everyone. Protect the black leader. Eli looked down at Luca's very serious face, feeling soft-hearted and helpless, smiling wryly. He crouched down and gently tousled Luca's messy hair, speaking softly. Luca, it's good that you have this heart. But a soldier needs a strong body and good skills. You're still too young. He pointed to the young men and women nearby, starting to line up for initial screening under Buck's guidance. See those older brothers and uncles? When you grow tall enough to be as high and strong as they are, and can hold real weapons, come find me. I promise, the Black Leaders' camp will leave a spot for you. Luca looked at the tall, strong soldiers, then at his own thin arms. His little mouth pouted, and a hint of unwillingness flashed in his eyes. But he nodded firmly. Yes, sir. I will grow up quickly. You have to keep your promise. Deal? Eli said softly, patting his shoulder. He stood up and left as Luca watched him with hopeful eyes. Leaving the noisy square behind, Eli slowed his steps. He looked at the children playing and chasing each other in the corner of the camp, their numbers clearly increasing. More and more children in the territory. A thought naturally came to him. Maybe I should consider finding a place to gather and look after the children. It would keep them safe and also let them learn something. The idea was vague, but it seemed necessary. He shook his head and temporarily set aside these trivial plans about the future. Right now, there was something more urgent. Esther, he called. The butler, who had been following nearby, immediately stepped forward. Young master, leave immediately and ride the fastest horse to Lucerne City to find Brandon. Tell him about the strange situation in the Nightsong Forest and our guesses about the beast disaster. Let him decide how many soldiers to recruit based on Lucerne City's defenses and possible threats. Tell him that if there is a food shortage, the Black Legion will support with some supplies. Yes. Young master. I'll go right now, Esther said without hesitation, turning and running toward the stables with quick, decisive movements. After arranging matters in Lucerne City, Ili did not return to the Lord's fortress, but headed straight to the Mithril mine in the southern canyon. Steam was billowing at the mine entrance, mixed with the sound of hammering and Master Glenn's characteristic shouting. Ili found Master Glenn. Master Glenn, how is the mining progress? He asked directly, glancing at the busy workers inside the mine. Master Glenn turned his head upon hearing and looked visibly annoyed and impatient. Kit, I know you're in a hurry, but the mithril veins are damn embedded in the layers. They're surrounded by chaotic star-patterned rocks. Do you think this is coal mining? Just swinging a pick, and it'll fall apart. He pointed roughly at the shimmering silver line on the rock wall with his rough finger. See that? You have to carefully peel along the nodes. Avoid those damn cracks. If you're careless, you might disturb the surrounding rock layers, causing damage to the veins or even a collapse. We could all be buried here. The amount being mined? It's not even enough to fill your teeth right now. This is delicate work. Watching Master Glenn spray saliva as he spoke, Ili's sense of urgency, caused by the potential threat, could only be suppressed with frustration. He understood that the master was right. Mining mithril couldn't be rushed. I understand, master. Safety first. I'll follow your pace, Ili said in a deep voice. Leaving the mine, he headed to the construction site of the city walls. Old John was busy working with a large group of slaves and free citizens, full of energy. The foundation trench had begun to take shape, with large stones being carefully dragged into place using ropes and rolling logs. The sound of shouts and hammering filled the air constantly. Progress was visible to the eye, but it was still far from being able to withstand a large attack. After a round of patrols, the strange gathering of beasts and the eerie silence on the outskirts of the Night Song Forest core area weighed heavily on Ely's mind, like a heavy stone. All clues, rumors, anomalies in reality, pointed toward the dark, deep parts of that forest. A decision was becoming clearer and heavier in his heart. He needed to know the truth. He needed to see it with his own eyes. Back at the Lord's fortress, Ely did not disturb Ella, who was busy handling affairs. He quietly entered the armory, carefully checked his silver sword to make sure it was sharp, and prepared himself. He put on the lightest, toughest black leather armor, packed some dried meat and a small water pouch into his belt. Finally, he took a rough map showing the general terrain of Night Song Forest. He knew this was not wise. Going deep into the unknown, dangerous core of the forest was risking his life. Buck and Wolfgang would surely oppose him if they found out, even to the point of using force. Only by seeing it myself, Ely whispered, his blue eyes shining with firm resolve. Instead of waiting anxiously for disaster to happen, he decided to uncover the mystery himself. Even just approaching the edge and observing would be better than sitting in the fortress and guessing. So he thought of the mysterious old butler. Ely silently pushed open the back door of the Lord's fortress. The cold night wind, carrying the dampness unique to the forest, rushed in. He tightened his black leather armor and placed his hand on the hilt of his silver sword at his waist. He was not reckless. He understood what the shadowed core of that place meant. Bringing Buck and the Black Raven Knight? That would be too loud, easy to alert the enemy, and facing unknown powers, numbers might not be an advantage. Just as he was about to step into the darkness, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind, Sebastian. That mysterious old butler. How could he forget him? Although it may seem rude or presumptuous to disturb and command someone of such seniority, at this moment, he might be the best companion, or even the only protection available. Ely quickly turned and walked briskly toward Sebastian's room. He took a deep breath, raised his hand, and knocked on the heavy wooden door. "Come in," Sebastian's calm, steady voice responded from inside. Ely pushed the door open. The old butler was sitting on a sturdy wooden chair, reading a thick leather-bound ledger by candlelight. His eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses lifted and looked calmly at Ely. "Butler," Ely said without small talk, directly stating his purpose. "I need to go deep into the Night Song Forest. I want to see for myself what has happened. I know this isn't the wisest choice, but instead of waiting passively for disaster, it's better to explore actively. So I need you to come with me." Sebastian listened quietly, closing the ledger in his hands. The candlelight flickered in his calm, deep eyes. He paused for a few seconds, seeming to weigh his options or recall some distant memory. "Going into the heart of the forest right now is indeed not wise," he said calmly. "But I am glad you thought of me, young master." He paused, his gaze passing through Ely as if looking into a deeper void. Sometimes, when faced with incomprehensible or overwhelming trouble, avoiding and waiting can also be a choice. Not out of weakness, but to gather strength and see the truth beyond the fog. Ely keenly sensed a fleeting sadness in Sebastian's words, as if he had faced many similar choices before. But the fire in his blue eyes did not go out. "Butler, I understand what you mean. But the Obsidian Realm is my responsibility. Luzon City is my responsibility. Everyone here is my responsibility. I cannot, and will not, run away." Sebastian wanted to argue that he shouldn't go, but he quietly looked at Ely's young yet resolute face, at his snow-white hair. Fine, there probably wouldn't be any problem. After a moment, he nodded slightly. Understood. He slowly stood up, moving smoothly and silently. "Then, let's go." Two figures like ghosts blending into the night silently slipped into the forest of Night Song. As soon as they reached the edge of the forest, the strange silence Wolfgang described as if it were a tangible wave washed over them. There was no sound of wind rustling the leaves, no calls of night owls, no buzzing of insects, not even the soft crunch of fallen leaves underfoot. Only their very light footsteps and the suffocating silence, as if an invisible barrier kept everything else out. Even the air seemed frozen. "Butler," Ili whispered softly, breaking the tense silence. "Do you think this might be a sign of a beast disaster? Perhaps this ancient man had enough experience to judge." Sebastian's steps didn't pause at all. His gray-white hair was almost invisible in the dim light. He silently took a few more steps before answering in a flat tone. "Maybe." The answer was vague. Ili was not convinced. "Have you seen something like this before? Or a beast disaster?" Sebastian paused a little longer this time, seeming to search through fragments of long memories, then finally spoke 2 words, "Perhaps." "I have." Ili thought. He felt a vein throbbing at his temple. This old butler always spoke in riddles, saying nothing clear. They had been walking in the oppressive silence for an unknown amount of time. The trees around them grew taller and thicker, their branches and leaves blocking out the faint starlight completely. The darkness was like ink, wrapping them tightly. The layer of decayed leaves underfoot grew thicker, making almost no sound when stepped on. In this extreme darkness and silence, the gloomy aura that Sebastian usually carried seemed to have faded a little. He even began to actively introduce Ili to the strange plants they encountered along the way, some emitting faint glow or strange scents in the darkness. "Young master, look at that fern. The star-shaped glowing spots on its leaves are clearest in complete darkness, serving as natural markers for small nocturnal animals. The sap of this ancient tree has a numbing effect and can be applied to weapons. Oh, that moss, when extremely wet, releases hallucinogenic spores if startled, so we should avoid it." Ili carefully observed his surroundings while listening to Sebastian's detailed whispers. An absurd but growing thought entered his mind. This old butler usually prefers staying in the shadows, so familiar with, and even enjoying the dark. Could he be the legendary vampire? If so, that would make sense. Wait, no, that doesn't seem right. I've never seen this butler drink blood. As this thought arose, Sebastian suddenly stopped walking. His usually calm expression vanished, replaced by a serious look Ili had never seen before. His eyes behind the glasses suddenly sharpened, as if piercing through the darkness to a specific direction. In the next moment, Ili saw a flash before his eyes. An irresistible force pulled him into a cold, hard embrace. Sebastian, wearing white gloves, tightly covered Eli's mouth and nose. Caught off guard, Ili instinctively tensed and struggled. Their bodies pressed close together, in a very intimate way. Ili could even feel the faint heartbeat beneath Sebastian's cold chest, almost not human. His face flushed red, and he tried to speak. "Silence. Young master." Sebastian's voice was very low, like it was echoing deep inside Eli's ears. A sense, a large gathering of life energy just ahead, very close. Before he finished speaking, Sebastian suddenly used his strength to grip Eli's arms. Ili felt his body lighten, and the solid ground beneath him quickly disappeared. Sebastian moved like a ghost, lightly stepping on the thick tree trunk, so fast that only a faint afterimage remained. In just a few breaths, they silently climbed to the top of the tallest ancient tree nearby, hiding among the dense canopy. Sebastian released his hand from covering Ili's nose and mouth, but still held his arm tightly, signaling him to look forward. Ili forced himself to suppress his embarrassment about climbing the tree and his pounding heart, following Sebastian's gesture. Carefully, he parted the thick branches in front of him, his eyes piercing through the gaps in the canopy. He looked down. The scene before him made his blood seem to freeze instantly. His pupils shrank sharply to a pinprick in shock. Not far ahead, in a clearing surrounded by huge, ancient trees, faint moonlight seeped through the high canopy gaps. Ili saw a terrifying sight he had never imagined, enough to overturn all his beliefs. Countless wild animals. Massive forest bears, shiny-coated night panthers, herds of wild boars with iron-maned tusks, agile rock deer, and even a few fierce-looking creatures, legendary thorny land dragons. Normally, predators and prey, wild animals full of instinctive conflict, now strangely coexisted peacefully. They crowded the clearing like pilgrims. What shocked Ili even more was, these fierce beasts, usually wild and full of strength, were all kneeling on the ground. The huge bear paws touched the earth, the fierce panther heads hung low, the wild boar's tusks touched the ground, and the strong rock deer knelt. All the animals, big or small, strong or weak, maintained a posture of extreme humility and reverence. Their heads, without exception, faced the deepest, darkest part of the clearing, where even faint moonlight could not penetrate. It was as if there, a supreme being existed, worthy of worship and reverence. Iliai's breath stopped. The scene in the clearing below filled him with a primal fear and shock. Countless animals, whether predators or prey, strong or weak, had abandoned their instinct for fierce fighting, kneeling densely on the ground. They stood in various postures, but all faced the absolute darkness at the center of the clearing, where all light was swallowed. It was not chaos, but a pilgrimage, a humble act of worship that surpasses species boundaries and is filled with deep reverence. Eli felt his blood rushing violently through his veins. Sebastian's breath also changed. He seemed completely merged with the shadow of the ancient tree, with only his sharp eyes piercing through the darkness, full of alertness and seriousness. At this moment, an indescribable sound quietly spread. It did not come through the ears, but seemed to directly touch the depths of the soul. There were no specific words or melodies, just a deep, humming sound carrying ancient sadness. Another faint, ethereal sigh contained endless compassion and authority. Every invisible note precisely struck the most primitive sense of awe in life. Eli's mind instantly lost control. A strong impulse from deep within his blood suddenly struck his willpower. His knees wanted to bend involuntarily, and his head felt heavy, wanting to lower. His consciousness became blurry, and the dark center seemed to spin, emitting an irresistible pull. "Young master," the old butler's voice sounded. It was not loud, but carried undeniable authority, pulling Eli back from the trance. Eli suddenly shivered, like a drowning person pulled out of the water, gasping for air. He looked at Sebastian in shock. The other's gaze was still fixed on the darkness, just slightly turned to give him a steady, warning look. Almost at the same time Eli regained his senses, the beast herd below underwent even more intense changes. The originally crawling herd now lowered their heads even more, trembling violently, making unintelligible whimpering and low growls. Their reverence, guided by the sound, turned into deeper, more complete submission. "Quite spectacular, isn't it?" A voice suddenly echoed in Eli's mind. Clear, ethereal, like a flowing spring under the moonlight. Eli's thoughts went blank for a moment. The scene before him was too shocking, and this strange voice directly affecting his consciousness was even more bizarre. He instinctively responded with a thought in his mind. As soon as the thought arose, he was startled. Eli suddenly turned his head sharply, his sharp eyes sweeping over the dark corners around him. Besides Sebastian beside me, only the kneeling beast herd below and the darkness in the center remain. Who is speaking? "What's wrong, young master?" Sebastian's voice drops even lower, like a whisper. He quickly notices Eli's sudden surprise and movement. "Butler," Eli's voice is tense, even he doesn't realize it. "Did you hear that? Someone talking?" A woman's voice? It sounded like it was directly in my mind. Sebastian's pupils behind his glasses suddenly constrict. Without hesitation, his gloved hand quickly grabs Eli's shoulder. The force is so strong that Eli feels his shoulder blades might be crushed. In the next moment, Eli feels the support beneath his feet vanish instantly, and he falls as if into a cold ink pool. It's not falling, it's merging. The surrounding scene, with huge ancient trees and crawling beasts, twists and stretches like reflections of stones thrown into water, then quickly blurs into streaks of light rushing backward. There is no wind, no feeling of weightlessness, only a coldness that envelopes him, as if dragged into a tunnel made entirely of shadows. Sebastian's figure is beside him, but blurry, like a dark gray silhouette. Just as they merge into the shadows and disappear, in the absolute darkness at the center of the forest clearing, two faint points of silver light flicker briefly. A figure, slender and graceful, floats silently above the darkness. The moonlight sparingly outlines her long, silver-white hair that reaches her ankles, pure as frost and snow. Her gaze pierces through space, precisely, seeing the direction where Eli and Sebastian disappeared. A faint, playful smile curves at her lips. Shadow demon. And another. A half-elf? Interesting. She clearly takes Eli's dazzling white hair, washed by the moonlit spring, as proof of his mixed heritage. Cold air suddenly rushes into her lungs, carrying the familiar scent of earth and fresh plants. Eli's feet hit the ground firmly, and he stumbles before steadying himself. The scene before him is no longer the endless ancient trees and strange beasts, but an open valley. In the distance, the faint glow of campfires in the black cloak camp flickers in the night, like warm lighthouses, dispelling the lingering cold and shock. They have returned. Eli took a deep breath, as if trying to exhale all the fear and shock trapped inside him. His tense nerves suddenly relaxed, and he felt a strong sense of weakness. The cold sweat on his back was blown by the night wind, sending shivers through him. Sure enough, the old butler's strength was beyond measure. The way he moved earlier was not something a human knight's aura could explain. Eli felt a mix of relief for surviving and many questions flooding his mind. Who was that woman who spoke directly inside his head just now? Was she the being in the darkness? Her voice? And those wild animals? What were they kneeling to? Was it that white-haired woman? Was that spiritual worship just a prelude to unleashing a disaster? That huge echo, what was it? Some kind of ritual? Summoning? Countless thoughts clashed in Eli's mind, trying to find a logical explanation, but only made him more confused. The secret deep in the Night Song Forest was far more mysterious than the elven ruins or the moonlight spring. He felt he had only touched the tip of a huge iceberg. Sebastian stood quietly a half-step behind him, returning to his usual calm and steady self. "Young master," Sebastian's flat voice broke the silence. "What you saw was indeed a beast tide." He paused. "Please take all precautions. Walls, weapons, supplies, warnings. Any mistake could lead to disaster." After a brief silence, Sebastian spoke again. "And, young master," he slightly lifted his gaze, looking at Eli's side profile. "This is the last time. Please, do not take such risks again." Eli's heart trembled. He understood Sebastian's unspoken warning. This time, he was lucky to have such an unpredictable but reliable butler by his side. But what about next time? Facing such unknown threats, personal bravery and curiosity could only lead to pointless destruction. He was a lord. His life no longer belonged to himself alone. Eli took a deep breath of the night air, carrying the scent of campfire smoke. He didn't argue or promise. He simply nodded very seriously. "I understand, butler. Thank you for your hard work." Sebastian nodded slightly, and said no more. He silently took a step back, his figure quickly fading into the shadows toward the camp, disappearing completely. Eli stood alone, watching where Sebastian had gone, then looked back at the outline of the Night Song Forest behind him, dark and like a crawling beast in the night. Scenes from the past flashed in his mind like images burned into his memory. He raised his hand, rubbed his still slightly throbbing temples, and forced himself to shake off the chaotic thoughts. The butler was right. The most important thing now is to survive, to protect the Black Territory and Lucent City. He didn't hesitate anymore and started walking toward the brightly lit Black Territory camp. His steps were steady and strong. Each step on the firm ground seemed to chase away the lingering cold in his heart. As he got closer to the camp, he could see soldiers patrolling the watchtowers clearly, and faintly hear the stern voice of Captain Buck from the distant new recruits' camp. Eli kept walking straight toward the Lord's fortress, but he didn't go inside immediately. Instead, he stopped in the open space in front of the fortress gate. He looked up at the deep night sky. There was no moon tonight, only a sky full of stars, cold and eternal, watching over the earth. Under the vast starry sky, the lights of the Black Territory looked so small, and the outline of the Night Song Forest was like a tiny wrinkle on the ground. A strange feeling of loneliness and insignificance crept into his heart, along with the heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer the spoiled prince who only knew how to enjoy himself in the royal capital, nor the reckless knight trying to survive in exile. He was Eli Pendragon, Baron of Lucent, bearer of the lives of 2 territories and thousands of people. The road ahead was long. The storm might just be beginning to brew. He stood quietly under the starry sky, his white hair like frost, his figure tall and straight like a spear, unmoving for a long time. The dawn had not yet fully dispelled the cold of the night, and the council hall of the Lord's fortress was brightly lit. Eli sat at the main seat, his white hair shining in the candlelight. Everyone, Eli's voice broke the silence. Last night, I and Butler Sebastian ventured into the core area of the Night Song Forest to investigate. He paused, his gaze pressing down on the entire room like a heavy weight. The silence in the forest where Wolfgang was attacked was not accidental. We saw with our own eyes. At the heart of the forest, countless beasts gathered, including giant bears, nightblade leopards, wild boars, and even thorny land dragons. A gathering of beasts, Old Hardy gasped. Oh my, a beast disaster. It's really a beast disaster. The catastrophe that disappeared years ago. How could it reappear? Thorny land dragons. Vic's dark face instantly lost its color. Sir, that scale. Captain Buck's eyes sharpened like a blade. Such a large beast group moving together. If they turned toward human lands, the consequences would be terrible. The meeting hall suddenly erupted. A beast disaster. Oh heavens, the thorny land dragons are out? I heard they can even knock down city walls. We're doomed. Our wooden fences. Even the calmest scholar Alva's hand holding the feather pen trembled slightly. Ili didn't stop him immediately, just listened quietly. Panic is useless. The beast tide threatens us all. We've gathered today only to survive. Black leaders, Luosan City, and even all of us. Our lives depend on this. Now, I need your wisdom and strength. How can we build a defense line we can hold before this overwhelming beast tide arrives? His eyes shone like fire, sweeping over everyone. Any ideas, big or small, as long as they are useful, speak freely. There was a brief silence. Captain Buck was the first to stand. Sir, the urgent task is to delay and exhaust the beast group. He pointed heavily at the simple map of Black Leader Valley spread on the table, indicating the edge where Night Song Forest meets the valley. If the beasts attack, they will come from here. We cannot defend inside the forest. But before they rush out of the forest into the open valley, we can set up many trap lines from the forest edge to the first defensive wall, deep pits, filled with sharp stakes or iron spikes at the bottom. Barricades, thick wooden stakes with outward-facing spikes to block impacts. Trip wires, hidden in the grass to trip and confuse the charging beasts. And animal traps, the bigger, the better, and as many as possible. Designed to catch large, fierce beasts' legs and paws. These materials are easy to obtain. Both slaves and free people can quickly make and set them up. Although we can't completely destroy the beast herd, we can greatly slow their advance, disrupt their formation, and cause heavy losses in the first wave. Eli's eyes lit up instantly. Setting traps. This is the most cost-effective, fastest way to see results, and it makes the best use of our terrain advantages, especially during this critical period before the city walls are finished. Good. Eli slapped the table decisively and gave the order. Captain Buck, do as you suggested. You are fully in charge of planning and setting the traps. Train the soldiers first with Wolfgang and Clark. Old John, cooperate fully. Prioritize supplying Buck with the wood and manpower he needs. I want to see a deadly zone that makes it hard for the beast herd to move in the shortest time. Understood, sir. Buck responded firmly. Old John nodded strongly. As soon as Buck sat down, Vic took a deep breath and stood up. Sir, Vic's voice rang out. Buck's method is effective against the impact. We in the southern border use it to defend against groups of jungle beasts, especially to drive away the herds near the village. The most common method is fire. He gestured with his hands. Beasts are naturally afraid of fire. We can dig a wide trench along the outer edge of our planned city wall defenses in advance. It won't be filled with water, but with fire oil, or dry grass and twigs soaked in oil. Once the herd breaks through the trap zone and approaches the wall, we can ignite the trench with a rocket, a burning wall of fire. It can stop some of the beasts. Even if a few fierce monsters manage to cross the fire, they will be burned and easier for the defenders to kill. Plus, the fire itself is a huge deterrent to the herd. Fire oil defenses. Eli quickly visualized the blazing flames in his mind. This is indeed an effective supplement for dealing with groups of wild animals, especially in open areas. Vic's experience is especially valuable right now. Vic, your advice is very timely, Eli nodded. I remember that the loot from Grom and Luzon City included a good amount of fire oil. Contact Brandon immediately and ask him to send half of the stockpile of fire oil to Black Ridge. At the same time, urgent orders were sent to the Thorn City North Merchants Guild to purchase as much as possible. Vic was responsible for digging the oil ditches, filling them, and preparing the fire-starting materials. Be sure to finish quickly. Yes, sir. I will do my best, Vic excitedly saluted. The two main pillars of the defense plan, delay traps and oil defenses, were initially established. Iliai's gaze shifted to the core of the plan. Old John. Iliai's eyes locked onto the veteran craftsman. Traps and firewalls are two barriers, but in the end, we must rely on the city wall for the final fight. The soldiers need a wall they can defend, even if it's only a half-finished wall right now. He pointed to the foundation being dug on the map. I don't care how you do it. Send more people. Work day and night. Pause all non-essential projects. Slaves, free citizens, craftsmen. Anyone who can hold a tool, get involved in building the wall. Prioritize raising the height of the main city gate and the two side towers, even if it's just a 3-meter-high stone barrier for now. Old John suddenly stood up. My lord, I'll risk my life. 5 days. No, 3 days. I will build a wall that can stand tall. Even those beasts trying to bite will have their teeth knocked out. Good. Iliai nodded heavily. The wall is now your responsibility. If there's any obstacle, come directly to me. As the core defense framework was established, other officials also offered suggestions to fill in gaps. Lien suggested that some slaves from the mine could help build the wall, and that more large animal traps could be forged from iron ore. Clark volunteered to organize young and strong free citizens into a support team for defending the city, responsible for transporting supplies and treating the wounded. Alva the scholar proposed using herbal medicines to create irritating powders, which could be spread in the trap areas and under the walls to possibly disturb the wild animals. One suggestion after another was made, discussed, and quickly turned into decisions. Seeing the defense plan gradually becoming feasible, Iliai's tense nerves finally relaxed a little. He leaned back in his chair and took a deep breath. Just then, a thought quietly entered his mind. The frontier of the Night Song Forest was not only connected to his Black Cloak territory. That arrogant fellow Sabuta's Shadow Valley domain was also right next to the forest. And it seems the position is a bit deeper than the Black Collar. Al's lips curl into a slight smile. That ambitious second son of the Southern Duke at the Alliance meeting. I wonder if he realizes that deep in the seemingly calm forest, a storm is brewing? He doesn't care about Sabuta's life or death. But then, 3 more figures suddenly appear before him. Griffin Easton, Hans Clave, and Amelia Frost. These 3 are his allies who chose to follow him in Shadow Valley and recognize him as their leader. Their territories. Al's brow furrows again. He had checked before. Their defenses are very weak. With their strength, facing the coming beast tide, they are like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Soon they will be crushed. As the leader, he can't just watch and do nothing. He understands the principle that if the roots are cut, the branches will fall. All right, Al suddenly stands up, his voice firm with the decision that the meeting is over. The defense plan is set. Everyone, start immediately. Captain Buck, Steward Vic, Old John, you have the heaviest responsibility. Begin now. Meeting adjourned. Everyone responds in unison and quickly leaves the meeting hall. Esther, stay behind. Al calls the young butler who is about to leave. When only the 2 are left, Al speaks in a serious tone. I have an urgent task for you. Pick the best guards, ride fast horses, and split up to go to the Easton, Clave, and Frost territories. Esther's expression becomes serious. Young master, please give the orders. Find the 3 lords themselves. Tell them directly. There will be a beast tide soon, and their current strength cannot withstand it. Al's tone is firm and decisive. Tell them to temporarily abandon their territories. Bring all the food, weapons, and the most important civilians they can carry. Move quickly, everyone to Black territory. Black territory will accept them and offer protection. Esther nods strongly. Yes, young master. I understand. I will do it immediately. He turns to leave but then pauses, showing a hint of hesitation on his face. Young master, what if they don't believe us? Or are reluctant to give up their hard-earned territories? I'll remain silent for a moment, then finally sighs. If they insist on staying, then let them be. Esther looked at Ely's tall but tired figure from behind and understood what it meant. He no longer asked questions and bowed deeply. I understand. We will set out immediately. He turned and walked away quickly and firmly from the meeting hall. Ely stood alone by the window, unconsciously tapping his fingers on the cold stone sill. The war against natural disasters and beast attacks had begun. The Obsidian Valley was like a tightly wound machine, running at high speed for 3 days straight. The trap area was taking shape under Bark's strict supervision. A wide death zone was marked at the forest's edge, with deep pits dug out. At the bottom, sharp wooden stakes and discarded iron scraps were hidden, covered with dirt and dry leaves to hide them. Strong barriers were deeply embedded in the ground, with sharp wooden spikes pointing toward the forest. Large animal traps were being built day and night by Leon and his team, then placed along key paths. Slaves and free citizens worked hard, transporting wood and stone to the city wall construction site under Old John's coordination. Vic and his team marked the location of the oil-filled moat and were digging it out with full effort. At this tense moment, the watchtower at the valley entrance sent a message. The troops from Easton, Clive, and Frost had arrived. Ely personally went to meet them at the valley entrance. The scene before him made his brow relax slightly, but a hint of heaviness remained. 3 groups rushed into Obsidian Valley like refugees. Griffin rode a thin horse, followed by a few scattered soldiers with simple gear and tired looks. More were villagers in ragged clothes, helping the elderly and children, pushing carts loaded with their belongings or carrying bundles. Hans's team was slightly better equipped, using their experience with mountain crevices to retreat more organized. The soldiers were more numerous, but all wounded. Lady Amelia's team was the largest, mostly women and children, but their order was chaotic. They carried little food and had limited weapons. Sir Ely, Griffin was the first to dismount and rush to Ely, with a complex expression on his face. Thank you for your warning. We are here. Amelia, supported by a maid, approached. Usually strong, she now had red eyes and slightly bowed to give a respectful bow. Lord Pendragon, thank you for your warning. If your messenger hadn't arrived in time, we might have already. She didn't finish her sentence, but everyone understood the unspoken meaning. Faced with the overwhelming tide of beasts, their simple defenses couldn't hold even for a moment. Leaving was only a dead end. Ily gently supported Amelia, his gaze sweeping over his 3 allies and the large group behind them. He spoke in a serious voice. It's good you're here. Black territory is your home. Est. Young master, Est immediately stepped forward. Arrange things immediately. Prioritize building shelters and providing basic food for the elderly, women, and children. Soldiers will temporarily join the new recruits camp under Captain Buck's command. The 3 lords and their families. Please follow me to the lord's fortress. Yes, Est responded quickly, immediately starting to guide and settle the frightened newcomers. Griffin, Hans, and Amelia followed Ily into the Black Territory camp. After just a few steps, their pace slowed naturally as they looked around. They saw a busy, orderly construction site, slaves and free people working under supervision, shouting as they moved stones, dug foundations, and built shelters. Huge logs were dragged toward the city wall with ropes and rolling logs, a lively scene. The partially built city wall, not tall but thick and stretching out, with a solid, reassuring presence. The well-planned area, residential zones, workshops, training grounds. Simple but clearly divided, with smooth roads. From the direction of the new recruits camp, they could hear Captain Buck's stern commands and the soldiers' orderly responses. All this was vastly different from their own rough, chaotic, and unstable frontier camp, which resembled a refugee camp. Griffin looked at the orderly scene before him, his throat tightening with emotion, finally letting out a bitter sigh. All knights of the frontier. Such a difference. Sigh. A warm feeling of survival lingered, along with a deeper respect and gratitude for Ily Pendragon, their leader. Their hearts surged with emotion. Fortunately, at that time in Shadow Valley, they made the best choice of their lives by following this young leader. Otherwise, they and their people might have already turned into bones on the barren land. Ily observed the complex expressions on the 3 people's faces without saying a word. He simply led them to the Lord's fortress for a brief rest and explained the current defenses of the Black Leader. After sending off his emotionally stirred allies, Ilai prepared to return to the council hall to handle the mountain of defense documents. Suddenly, a faint blue light screen silently appeared in his mind. A deep purple beam of light suddenly lit up. Purple. In the core area of the Nightsong Forest, wild beast groups are showing obvious signs of movement. Large groups are organizing and moving toward the forest edge. Ilai's steps froze instantly, and his pupils shrank. The moment had arrived. Those wild animals finally moved. Time was more urgent than he had expected. Meanwhile, in Shadow Valley, the council hall of the Lord's residence, Sabuda sat at the main seat, his handsome face cold and expressionless, without a trace of a smile. Only a chilling aura. On either side of him, several trusted nobles from the southern realms sat. Near the corner of the hall, 3 pioneer leaders were seated, those who had chosen to stay and join Sabuda's alliance during the Shadow Valley gathering. But now, their faces looked very grim, filled with anger and deep regret. They were brought here like prisoners to discuss matters. Their territories had already been forcibly taken over by Sabuda's trusted agents and Southern Realm soldiers. It was called unified defense, but in reality, it was outright annexation. They had been completely sidelined, turned into prisoners of Sabuda. One of the lords looked at Sabuda's indifferent profile and then at the nearby vigilant southern guards, feeling angry but unable to speak. Why? Why didn't they run away like Griffin and the others? Now, everything was over. Luke, Sabuda's cold voice broke the silence. Any recent news? Luke immediately stood up, reporting, "Young master. Everything else is normal, but it's strange that our hunting teams have returned empty-handed. The situation is very strange." He swallowed hard. They said the forest is too quiet. Quiet to the point of being frightening. Not only no prey, but not even a bird's call can be heard. It's like all living creatures have hidden away or run off. The hunting team went deep inside, but didn't even catch a single fur of the beast. Dead silence. Sabuda's brow furrowed as well. Young master, Ragna, sitting to Sabuda's left with a serious face, spoke. He is one of the few nobles under Sabuda who is truly smart and capable. This matter is very strange. The large disappearance of beasts in the forest's core area. Even the scouts we sent mentioned something unusual. This is definitely not just weather or local food shortages. Could it be a sign of a bigger disaster? He paused, speaking with a rare seriousness, like, "A beast surge, a beast surge." Luke sneered, showing clear disdain. "Ragna, are you scared? A beast surge? That's an old story from decades ago. I think there's a powerful magical beast in the forest that chased away or ate all the other animals." Another noble from the southern region also stood up, agreeing with Luke. "Luke is right. Ragna, you're too cautious. The most important thing now is to unite our forces and prepare for Eli's possible trouble. We should send more scouts into the forest to investigate carefully and strengthen the outer defenses." After saying that, he deliberately shot a challenging look at Ragna. "I'm just suggesting a possibility." Ragna remained calm. Sabuda looked between the two, pondering for a moment. He was somewhat cautious about Ragna's judgment, as the strange happenings in the forest made him uneasy. But the more urgent threat seemed to be that embarrassing white-haired baron. "All right." Sabuda raised his hand to stop any argument. "Ragna's worries are reasonable, and Luke's words are also true. The forest is indeed strange, and we must be cautious. As discussed, triple the number of scouts. Send them deep into the forest to find out what's going on. At the same time, all defenses in Shadow Valley should be on alert. Increase patrols and reinforce watchtowers." "Yes, young master." Luke and the noble immediately responded loudly, glancing at Ragna with a proud look. Sabuda looked at everyone in the hall, suddenly smiling. He slowly stood up. "Everyone, there's no need to worry too much, because I have another good news to announce." He deliberately paused. "Just yesterday, I received a secret family message. To support our expansion in the western region and to deal with some overconfident challengers, my father, the noble Duke Hakeson Medici, has decided to send reinforcements." He looked at the excited southern nobles and announced clearly, "A golden-ranked knight and 200 well-equipped elite soldiers. They will arrive at Shadow Valley soon." "Golden Knight? 200 elites?" The Duke is wise. The meeting hall immediately erupted in loud cheers, especially the southern nobles, whose faces turned red with excitement. A golden-ranked knight. This is top-level strength that can change the outcome of local battles. Plus, 200 trained elite soldiers. They had previously been suppressed by the Golden Knight beside Ilii. Sabuta watched the passionate subordinates below and the 3 terrified prisoner lords, a cold smile appearing on his face. This reinforcement was something he had to humble himself to ask for, exaggerating Ilii Pendragon's arrogance and insulting the Medici family in his letter to his father. It was finally obtained through his efforts. But there were conditions: earn merits in battle, gain a noble title, and replace Ilii. His gaze seemed to pierce through the walls of the Lord's mansion, directed toward the Black Cloak, filled with deep hatred and the thrill of revenge. Gather all the leaders. Immediately. Right now? Esther almost scrambled out. Within 15 minutes, all the key leaders rushed into the meeting hall with serious faces. Ilii stood at the head position, not sitting down. Everyone, his voice was deep. My raven just brought back precise news. He paused, each word like a heavy hammer hitting everyone's hearts. The beast groups in the core area of Nightsong Forest are moving in large, organized groups toward the forest edge. Of course, only some of the beast groups are attacking us. What? Already so fast? Oh my God! The exclamations instantly filled the room, mixed with gasps of shock. Despite the early warning, the speed of the news still shocked everyone. There's no time to panic. Ilii's voice suddenly rose sharply, full of firm determination. The front of the beast tide could break out of the forest at any moment. Captain Buck. Understood. Buck stood tall like a spear. His calm presence as a golden-ranked knight quickly subdued the surrounding chaos. Immediately organize all soldiers, wolf people warriors, and knights. Follow the defense plan. All new recruits must be added to the defense line. I want them in their positions within half an hour. Ilii's gaze turned to Old John. Old John, you are in charge of organizing all non-combatants, slaves, free citizens, the elderly, and children. Immediately abandon all current work, carry a few essentials, and evacuate to the designated shelter deep in the valley. Security officers will escort along the way. Move quickly. Yes, sir. Buck and Old John responded loudly in unison. Old John no longer hesitated and turned to rush out of the meeting hall. His hoarse shout echoed outside. Everyone, follow me. Hurry, Vic. Ilii's eyes locked on the slave overseer. Yes, sir. Vic straightened his back, his dark face showing resolve. The oil barrier is our second line of defense. I want it to be foolproof, Ilii said firmly. Yes, sir. It will be foolproof. Vic pounded his chest. Everyone else, do your part. Scholar Alva, organize the medical team to prepare for treating the wounded. Clark, organize the reserve team, ready to support the city wall breaches. Master Glenn, the mine. Abandon it for now. All miners joined the reserve team. Ilii's gaze swept across everyone and declared decisively, Black leaders, life and death depend on this battle. Dismissed. There was no extra rallying cry or heroic speech. Everyone, like arrows shot from a bow, rushed out of the meeting hall and headed to their posts. Ilii didn't pause for a moment. He grabbed the silver badge at his waist, strode quickly behind Buck, and headed toward the new recruits' camp. The camp was already a scene of wartime chaos. Piercing horns echoed over the valley. Soldiers, like a rushing black iron stream, quickly assembled, received weapons, and rushed toward their designated defense zones amid the shouts of officers. Old John, leading a large group of overseers and key free citizens, shouted loudly like a shepherd. He guided the frightened slaves and women and children, forming a huge crowd that surged into the valley. Buck stood on the command platform, silencing all the noise. Black Raven Knights. Form ranks. Wolfmen Warriors. Form ranks. New recruits, squads 1 to 5. Form ranks. Commands were quickly issued. A defense force of nearly 400 people was assembled, centered around 25 Black Raven Knights, 13 Wolfmen Warriors led by Wolfgang, and a mixed infantry of 350 new and veteran soldiers. Climb the wall. Buck waved his hand. Almost 400 soldiers surged toward the simple wall, which was just 3 meters high and still smelled of fresh mud and rocks. Heavy footsteps echoed through the valley. Ilii followed Buck and quickly climbed onto the wall. Below were rough, uneven stones with fresh mud filling the gaps. The wall was not tall and not very thick, but in this endless valley, it was the only barrier. The soldiers quickly lined up along the battlements, archers in front, spear bearers behind, tense and adjusting their breathing. They stared fixedly at the silent, intimidating edge of the forest ahead. Vic and his men did a final check near the moat about 100 meters in front of the wall. The moat was filled with a thick layer of dry grass and twigs soaked in oil. Vic looked up at Ilai on the wall, nodded firmly, signaling everything was normal. Time passed slowly in the suffocating silence. The edge of the forest remained quiet. No bird songs, no animal roars, only the monotonous rustling of leaves in the wind. The soldiers clenched their weapons, their knuckles turning white from the grip. Sweat dripped down their foreheads onto the rough battlements. Buck stood like a statue beside Ilai, his sharp eyes sweeping every suspicious movement at the forest edge. Suddenly, a dull, distant, heavy pounding sound like countless hammers hitting the ground came from deep within the forest. At first, the noise was chaotic, but it quickly became orderly and heavy, pounding forcefully into everyone's ears and hearts. The trees at the edge of the forest began to shake violently. "Here they come!" Buck roared suddenly, like thunder crashing on the silent city walls. "Everyone, get ready to fight. Stay alert." The soldiers stiffened instantly, waking from their wait, adrenaline rushing wildly through their bodies. They knocked arrows, raised spears, their heavy breathing and armor-scraping sounds blending into a tense pre-battle symphony. Ilai did not hesitate. He closed his eyes immediately, focusing his mind, and shared his vision with the crow named Coal Ball, circling above. Suddenly, a panoramic view opened up. In the next second, at the forest's edge, like a black floodgate opening, a torrent of wild animals surged out. Countless creatures, leopard, wild boar, deer, wolf, of various shapes and sizes, formed an endless, chaotic wave. Their hooves pounded the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. Ilai's view quickly swept behind the beast horde. No giant bear, no thorny dragon. He relaxed slightly, almost instinctively estimating, at least a few thousand. Though still terrifying, luckily, the worst-case scenario had not appeared. Roar, a deafening roar of beasts merged into a destructive wave, smashing through the forest's edge. The black tide of creatures, with unstoppable momentum, like a bursting dam, flooded out of the woods toward the city walls of Black Crown. The traps Buck set immediately took effect. The leading beasts fell into cleverly concealed pits, sharp wooden stakes piercing through their bodies, howling painfully. The following animals, unable to stop, collided with barriers, pierced by spikes or tripped by snares, causing even greater chaos. Huge animal traps snapped shut, breaking legs and pinning beasts in place. The vanguard of the beast tide was thrown into disarray, their charge slowed. Screams, the cracking of bones, angry roars filled the air. Within moments, the trap zone became a bloody slaughterhouse. "Good," a muffled cheer erupted from the city walls. But the number of beasts was overwhelming. The remaining animals, ignoring their fallen comrades and bloodshed, continued to charge forward wildly. They moved like a dark, raging wave, quickly crossing the trap area and charging toward the oil-filled moat 100 meters in front of the city wall. "Archers!" Ilai shouted sharply. His guards immediately handed him a strong bow and a special fire arrow. He held his breath, eyes sharp as lightning, instantly locking onto the center of the moat. The bow drew back fully. The arrow ignited. Whoosh! A burning meteor tore through the air, with a sharp scream, accurately hitting the middle of the moat. Boom! It was like an eruption of fire from the earth. A wall of flames several meters high shot up instantly along the trench. The hot air rolled outward, engulfing the frontline beasts in an instant. The smell of burnt fur, the thick black smoke from burning oil, and the piercing screams of the dying beasts filled the entire battlefield. It was even more intense and spectacular than expected. The towering flames looked like a roaring fire dragon, blocking the beast tide from reaching the city wall. The rushing wave of beasts, like crashing waves hitting rocks, stalled suddenly in front of the fiery wall. Countless beasts were scorched by the flames, panicked and screaming as they retreated and turned around, causing chaos in their formation. "Good job," Burn them all! Long live the Lord! The wall erupted with deafening cheers. The soldiers waved their weapons excitedly, morale soaring. But before the cheers could die down, Buck's cold voice struck like a heavy hammer. Don't celebrate too early. Archers, prepare. Eli's heart sank. The firewall was fierce but limited in reach. On both sides and in areas where the fire was weaker, some brave or pushed-back beasts still charged through the flames, smoke billowing from their bodies and burn scars on their skin, howling as they crossed the fire. More than 300 or 400 beasts had crossed the wall. They had been driven into a frenzy by the flames, becoming even more savage. With their bodies smelling of burnt flesh and pain, like demons crawling out of hell, they wildly lunged toward the low stone wall. Virum! A dense, nerve-wracking sound of bowstrings vibrating filled the air. In an instant, black arrows like suddenly rising clouds of death covered the sky. With sharp, piercing screams, they fiercely rained down on the beast herd crossing the firewall. Thud! 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 Roar! The dull sound of arrows hitting flesh and the agonized howls of wounded beasts quickly replaced the explosion of flames. The frontline beasts were like cut wheat, falling to the ground in large groups. However, despite the dense arrow rain, not all were hit. Second wave. Fire. Third wave. Fire. Buck's cold commands kept ringing out. After 3 rounds of arrow storms, more beasts fell, but the remaining ones, still bearing arrows, surged like mad waves beneath the city wall. Roar! A blackened wild boar with sharp tusks, glaring with crimson eyes, suddenly stood upright. Its sturdy front hooves slammed down on the wall with great force. Bang! Stones shattered, dust flew everywhere. The rough impact sounded like a death knell, striking the hearts of the city defenders. The newly built stone wall trembled violently under the assault of the furious beast herd, groaning under the strain. Spearmen! Stab! Buck shouted angrily. The prepared spearmen, holding heavy spears, thrust fiercely through the gaps in the wall. The sharp spear tips pierced into the beasts' necks, eyes, and soft bellies. Yow! Piercing screams of pain echoed. At this moment, the beasts below were completely driven by bloodlust and instinct. Ignoring their fallen comrades, they trampled over the bodies. They roared, pressed together, and crazily climbed upward. Sharp claws dug into the cracks in the stone. Thick horns rammed forcefully, and tusks gnawed at any protrusions they could use for leverage. Stab its eyes, hit it, throw stones. On the wall, the officers' shouts were drowned out by the symphony of beast roars and human screams. The spear wielders' faces turned pale, their arms aching from the relentless stabbing motion. Thud! The spear tip sank deep into a blackened wild boar's neck. Yow! The boar let out a desperate, agonized scream. Its massive body twitched and fell backward, knocking down a crowd of nearby comrades. But in the next moment, a night-blade leopard seized the gap, its claws flashing like lightning. A soldier grabbed a spear that was sticking out too far from the wall due to his strength. Ah! The soldier shouted in surprise as a powerful force suddenly pulled him downward. He lost his balance instantly, half of his body hanging outside the wall. A nearby companion shouted in alarm, trying to pull him back, but was pushed aside by a charging mountain deer. A sharp arrow whistled through the air, accurately piercing the red eye of the night-blade leopard. Yow! The leopard cried out in pain, loosening its grip. The soldier was almost pulled back inside the wall by his companion and collapsed on the ground, gasping heavily. Eli silently lowered his powerful bow, then quickly drew his silver dagger from his waist. A forest wolf, just about to claw the edge of the wall, was cut in half by the swift arc of light. Its foul guts and hot wolf blood splattered everywhere. At the moment he swung his sword, Eli's gaze pierced through the chaos of the beast herd below the wall. He keenly spotted a relatively still figure on a small hill behind the battlefield. It was a large wolf, bigger than an ordinary forest wolf, with strange dark silver fur. It did not join the frantic attack on the city walls, but sat calmly at the top of the hill, watching the battlefield with a cold gaze. Whenever the pressure on a part of the wall eased or the beast attack slowed, it would lift its head and let out 1 or 2 sharp, penetrating howls. Captain Bark, Eli's voice cut through the noise. Kill it. That wolf is commanding. On the eastern side of the wall, Bark had just split a Nightblade leopard in half from head to tail with a single sword strike. The hot beast blood covered his face and head, and the remains of several beasts piled around his feet, creating a brief vacuum zone. He suddenly looked up at the sound, instantly locking onto the conspicuous dark silver giant wolf on the hill. "Wolfgang!" Bark roared like thunder. "Cover me!" Roar! Wolfgang, a mighty figure, let out a deafening growl. He led 13 fierce wolf-like warriors, like 13 silver lightning bolts, leaping from the breach in the wall. "Kill!" Wolfgang's massive claws tore through the air, knocking a wild boar with a thick mane flying. The 13 wolf-like warriors followed closely behind, tearing a bloody path through the crowded beast herd in front of Bark. They used their sharp claws and strong bodies to block the rushing beast horde trying to fill the gap from both sides. "Black Crow, charge with me!" Buck didn't hesitate at all. He led 6 elite Black Crow Knights, core members of the Silver Rank, and suddenly leapt down from the city wall. They didn't land, but stepped precisely on the crowded beast heads or backs below. It was like walking on a blood and flesh floating bridge, rushing toward the hill. Every swing of Buck's great sword caused dazzling golden energy to cut through, smashing the blocking beasts like straw. The dark silver giant wolf on the hill finally sensed the deadly threat. It suddenly stood up and let out a series of sharp, urgent howls. Howl! Howl! The beast horde, which had been wildly attacking the city wall, seemed to hit a pause button, then erupted into even more violent chaos. Many beasts below the wall abandoned their attack and turned around, madly rushing toward Buck and his team. In an instant, Buck and the 6 Black Crow Knights' momentum was forcibly stopped. They were surrounded by beasts dozens of times their size. "Master!" Wolfgang looked at Buck's team trapped in the heavy encirclement, eyes wide with desperation, and shouted anxiously. He struggled to tear through the beasts in front of him, trying to rescue them, but was caught by more beasts turning back to attack. The pressure on the wall eased suddenly, but Buck's dangerous situation made everyone's hearts tighten. Ilii stood on the wall, watching Buck's team struggling in the beast horde below. A fiery anger mixed with cold killing intent instantly overwhelmed his reason. His eyes were bloodshot. "Follow me." Ilii suddenly raised his silver hand. No grand speeches, only 3 words, filled with reckless determination. Before he finished speaking, he supported the blood-stained wall with one hand, and, like a swift white leopard, leapt down from the 4-meter-high wall. "Lord!" Wolfgang, Clark, and Pole shouted in heart-wrenching alarm. But their shouts quickly turned into action. Wolfgang let out a deafening roar, and his massive wolf claws unleashed unprecedented strength. He forcefully tore through the beast horde in front of him, protecting Ilii by his side. Clark's golden eyes burned with fighting spirit. He drew his long sword and jumped down without hesitation. Boar waved his heavy war hammer and shouted, "Protect the Lord," as he charged forward like a human-shaped war machine. "Kill them, for the Lord!" On the city wall, soldiers watched their lord lead the charge. Their suppressed fear was instantly replaced by a fierce, fiery courage. That figure with blood-stained white hair, rushing alone into the beast swarm, ignited the deepest, most primitive bravery in their hearts. Someone was the first to roar in anger, and soon, like a spreading fire, the entire wall erupted with thunderous shouts. Many soldiers, especially veteran fighters and Ili's personal guards, shouted loudly. They leapt down the wall like falling dumplings or rushed down the makeshift ladders wildly. Their eyes were red, and they waved swords and spears like raging waves. They crashed fiercely into the beast horde behind Buck, who was turning to face the attack. Ili landed, rolled to absorb the impact, and with his silver blade, cut off the head of a rushing forest wolf. Without stopping, he pushed off the ground with force, like an arrow shot from a bow, charging straight toward Buck, who was surrounded. "Break out!" Buck, trapped in a tight encirclement, saw the white-haired figure tear through the beast swarm like a sharp blade. His great sword swung wide, cutting through a circle of wild animals around him. Ili led the fresh troops like a sharp spear, stabbing fiercely into the side and rear of the beast pack attacking Buck. The soldiers roared, stabbing with spears, slashing with swords, and smashing with shields. The beast horde was thrown into chaos by this sudden, fierce attack. The encirclement was torn open with a huge gap, Buck seized this rare opportunity, transforming into a brilliant golden streak. In an instant, he broke through the last few layers of beast resistance, aiming straight at the giant wolf on the hill. Beast, die! Buck's roar was like the wrath of a thunder god. The dark silver giant wolf finally showed extreme fear in its eyes. It wanted to run, but Buck was too fast. The golden sword light like a judgment thunder tore through the air, carrying a destructive force, striking down directly. Howl woo! A piercing, desperate scream suddenly stopped. The golden energy slash cut through like slicing tofu, splitting the dark silver giant wolf and a corner of the dirt mound beneath it into two parts. The foul smell of wolf blood and internal organs mixed with dirt and stones, splashing several meters high. In an instant, all the remaining wild beasts on the battlefield seemed to lose their backbone. Their crazed, bloodthirsty eyes were replaced by confusion and fear. Howl! The chaotic cries replaced the savage roars. The beasts spun around like headless flies, making frightened low sounds, and even began to bite and trample each other. Roar! Kill them all! Wolfgang roared, leading wolf-like warriors like fierce tigers into a flock of sheep, chasing the collapsing herd. Chase! Don't let them escape! Clark, Pole, and others shouted angrily, leading soldiers to beat the fallen enemies. The pressure on the city walls was gone. Only scattered resistance and one-sided pursuit remained. However, Ilya did not join the chase. He leaned on his silver weapon, standing amidst the mountain of corpses and blood, gasping heavily. His white hair was stuck together with coagulated blood, and his face and armor were covered in dark red stains, indistinguishable whether from beasts or himself. He raised his head and looked around at this hellish battlefield. At the foot of the city wall, bodies piled up like mountains. The remains of beasts and human soldiers were mixed together, trampled into shapeless messes. Claw marks, dents from impacts, and splattered blood covered the walls, like scars of battle. The air was filled with the burnt smell of fire, strong bloodstains, and the stench of broken internal organs. The fierce fighting had lasted a full hour from when the city wall was attacked to this moment. That hour felt as long as a century. Ilya knelt weakly on the ground, his fingers gripping the silver sword hilt so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The smoke had not yet cleared. In Shadow Valley, once a carefully planned southern territory by Subuta Medici, now lay in ruins like a hell on earth. Close to the depths of the forest, Shadow Valley had endured a much greater beast tide than the Black Territory. Most of the low but orderly wooden and stone houses had collapsed, turned into blackened ruins after burning. The workshop area is now just a skeleton billowing black smoke. The newly formed farmland has been completely flattened, as if repeatedly plowed over by a giant plow. The defensive walls have been broken in many places, with large gaps, and the wooden watchtowers are broken and fallen. Everywhere are bodies, soldiers, common folk, and mostly the remains of huge wild beasts. They are piled up in twisted shapes on the streets, among the ruins of houses, trampled into chaos. Subuta is sitting on the roof of the Lord's mansion, his delicate and handsome face covered with soot and dried blood. His gray eyes, which always sparkle with ambition, now only show numbness and deep, piercing sorrow. He has worked hard, investing all the family's vast resources. Almost everything is gone. If not for the reinforcements sent by his father, led by a golden-ranked knight, and 200 elite soldiers arriving just in time to withstand the most furious second wave of the beast tide, he might have already become another cold corpse on this scorched land. Regret, like a poisonous snake, bites at his heart. If only he had listened to Ragnar's advice in the council hall, paid enough attention to the strange happenings in the forest, would the ending have been different? He clenched his fists tightly, but couldn't ease the sharp pain in his heart. Tears spun wildly in his eyes, but he used all his strength to suppress them. His pride wouldn't allow him to show weakness in front of anyone. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Subuta did not turn around. He knew who it was. Ragnar walked to his side, both of them gazing at the hellish scene before them. The cold, stern noble face showed no glee or schadenfreude, only deep exhaustion and heaviness. Truly a family of vipers, hard to find, Ragnar said in a low, hoarse voice, breaking the suffocating silence. Subuta remained silent, his throat moving painfully as he swallowed. Ragnar didn't look at him but focused on the struggling survivors among the ruins, his voice carrying a faint, almost imperceptible sigh. So, a crushing defeat, and you've broken the backbone of the Duke of the southern border? You came to us promising to unify the southern part of the western border, connect the south, and expand into new territories. You wanted the Medici family's power to take root here. But this is not what it looks like now. This sentence is like a sharp knife, stabbing deeply into Sabuta's most painful spot. He suddenly closes his eyes, and his body begins to tremble slightly, unable to control it. Humiliation, anger, fear, and a sense of responsibility crash over him like a wave, breaking down his last defenses. A hot tear finally escapes, slipping down his dusty face, breaking through his proud barrier. He quickly raises his hand and wipes his face with a sleeve stained with blood and dirt. When he opens his eyes again, all weakness in his gray eyes has been forcibly suppressed. He suddenly turns around, with his back to Ragnar and the ruined battlefield. His voice is hoarse and deep. Ragnar, count the casualties. Check all usable supplies. Comfort all the surviving villagers. Tell Luke and the others to clear the debris, treat the wounded, and gather the bodies. Immediately. Right now, under the same bleak sky, in the Black Ridge Valley. The noise of battle has fallen silent, but the smell of blood and burnt flesh still fills the air, worse than in Shadow Valley. The soldiers silently clean up the battlefield. There is no joy of victory on their faces, only numbness and deep exhaustion after surviving. Some carefully carry the recognizable bodies of fallen comrades on simple stretchers. Most others and villagers endure the urge to vomit, dragging the bodies of beasts into piles that make the heart race. In a relatively safe area behind the city wall, a temporary medical tent is filled with painful moans. Ayla's eyes are bloodshot, and her fair face is covered with blood and ash. She is working with Scholar Alva and assistants, moving quickly among the wounded to treat various injuries. The strong smell of herbs mixes with the scent of blood, filling the air. Ayla stands alone on the damaged city wall. She leans on the rough, cold stone, her gaze calm as she surveys the hellish scene below. Beneath that calm lies an unfathomable heaviness. The steady sound of footsteps approaches from behind, accompanied by the faint noise of armor rubbing. Captain Buck walks over to Ayla. His face is also tired, and his black armor bears deep claw marks and dents from impacts. Several damaged areas are roughly tied with cloth strips, bleeding dark red blood. Sir, Bark's voice is deep. Initial count is complete. Ilai does not turn around, only slightly tilts his head to signal him to continue. Our fallen soldiers, 47. Mostly new recruits, killed by beasts that jumped onto the walls during the defense, or in close combat. Severely injured and unable to fight, 83. Many with missing limbs, internal injuries, light injuries. Countless, almost everyone is wounded. Black Raven Knight Order. One fallen, silver-ranked Knight Taj, died exhausted during our assault. 3 seriously injured, exhausted from fighting, with multiple fractures, Wolfkin warriors. 5 lightly injured, no serious issues. Behind these cold numbers are lively lives, soldiers who trust and follow him. Fathers, sons, brothers of the black-clad people. With each cold number announced, Ilai's fingers gripping the wall tighten a little more. The cost of victory is so heavy it nearly takes his breath away. 47 soldiers. 1 silver knight. This is the heaviest loss the Black Land has suffered since its founding. Those lively faces, those young lives sweating on the training grounds. All fallen here to protect this land. Young master. Bark looks at Ilai's side profile, unable to hold back. He wants to say, you've already done enough in such a terrifying beast tide. Holding the territory, leading the charge, defeating the beasts, it's already a miracle. But his words are interrupted by Ilai raising his hand. Ilai slowly turns around. The calm on his face disappears. His gaze crosses Bark, looking at the silent soldiers on and below the wall. He takes a deep breath, his chest rising and falling sharply. Then, he suddenly raises his voice, clear and loud across the battlefield. Brothers, all the busy soldiers and civilians instinctively stop what they are doing, lift their heads, and look up at the figure with white hair on the wall. Iliai's gaze sweeps over faces full of exhaustion and sorrow. He raises his hand, pointing to the mountain of beast corpses below the wall, those killers who took their comrades' lives. Look at these monsters. They took our brothers' lives. They want to make us afraid. They want us to give up. But today, we held our ground. We made them pay with blood. Now, he suddenly pointed to the mountain of corpses and blood. Let's skin these beasts. Tear their bones apart. Build fires. Roast them. Stew them. Eat them all. Use their flesh and blood to honor our fallen brothers. To tell this cursed wasteland. He almost shouted the last words. Obsidian territory. Pendragon. We will never surrender. After a brief silence. Roar. Eat them all. Avenger our brothers. Long live Pendragon. Like a volcano erupting after a long silence. The deafening roar of revenge swept through the entire Black territory. Era looked up from the medical tent, watching the figure on the city wall, white-haired, flying in the wind, igniting everyone's passion like a war god. Her purple eyes were full of complex feelings, worry, tenderness, and a hint of proudness she couldn't quite explain. Bark stood half a step behind Ely, quietly watching that white-haired figure standing tall in the morning light. Seeing the soldiers and townspeople below, fully ignited, his face covered in blood and exhaustion, he showed a faint smile. He remembered the arrogant young man who, at the Shadow Valley Council, dared to recommend himself as leader despite Sabuta's pressure. He remembered the young commander who, after the fierce battle on the windless plain, forced himself to clean the battlefield despite nausea, then led the troops to Lucent City. And he remembered just half an hour ago, the determined figure who, to save him, leapt off the city wall without hesitation. Lord Marquis, Bark silently whispered in his heart, filled with a feeling beyond duty. Your son has become a lion forged in the blood and fire of the wilderness. A true leader who can carry his territory on his back and ignite his followers with courage. At this moment, Obsidian territory was bustling with vitality. On the city walls and below, soldiers were cleaning up the last traces of the battlefield. The scorched earth was turned over, huge beast carcasses were disassembled, and thick pelts were stripped away. Old women and quick-handed women scraped off the fat and hung the skins to dry in the sun. Large chunks of dark red beast meat are skillfully cut by the butcher, sprinkled with coarse salt, and hung on a ventilated wooden rack. The huge skeleton is broken open and put into a boiling pot to cook fats and bone broth. Last night's bonfire feast, where blood and flesh were used to honor spirits and vent anger, consumed some of the spoils. However, the leftovers from the beast tide are still enormous. Piles of meat, fats, and pelts fill the warehouse of the Black Banner like never before. Eli even ordered extra meat to be distributed to all villagers, including the new slaves. After a brief celebration, there is a longer period of stability. The food shortage, a constant threat hanging over the frontier settlers, was temporarily eased after this fierce victory. For a while, neither the Obsidian Banner nor Lucent City needs to worry about enough food. Eli stands at the window of the Lord's fortress, looking down at the busy scene in the valley below. The wealth gained through blood and life brings him some comfort. But the real foundation of the territory is its people. Wounds from war need healing, and strengthening the Black Banner and rebuilding Lucent City require labor. EST, Eli turns around. Go to Thorn City again. His voice is steady and firm. Find the manager Karen of the North Trade Guild, and tell him that the Black Banner and Lucent City still need people, strong, healthy workers. Tell him I want as many as he can get. The price remains the same as last time. Then Eli walks to his desk, pauses for a moment, and quickly writes on a sheepskin scroll. To Sir Lucius LaRoche, Governor of the Western Lands, your loyal Pendragon reports. The Black Banner has successfully repelled the large beast tide that emerged from the Nightsong Forest. The battle was fierce, with heavy casualties, but the territory was preserved. The scale and ferocity of the beast tide far exceeded previous records, originating deep within the forest. This is no coincidence. Sir, be cautious of similar disasters in other parts of the Western Lands. The Obsidian Banner and Lucent City are in ruins and need time to recover, but Pendragon will never forget the duty to protect the Western Lands. He describes the beast tide in detail and subtly emphasizes his own sacrifices and losses. He also expresses loyalty and dedication to the Western lands. Finally, he sealed the letter with the emblem of the winged black dragon. Include this letter as well. Hand it personally to Sir Lucius, Ilai said, handing the sealed letter to Est. Understood. Rest assured, my lord, Est replied, carefully taking the letter and then quickly leaving to carry out the task. Not long after Est left, the heavy wooden door of the council hall was gently knocked. Come in, Ilai responded. The door was pushed open, and Griffin, Hans, and Emilia entered. Their expressions were different from usual, showing more nervousness and seriousness. The three exchanged glances, seeming to hesitate and pass the responsibility among themselves. Finally, Griffin took a deep breath and stepped forward. Seeing their hesitant and uneasy looks, Ilai couldn't help but find it a bit amusing. Leaning back in his chair, he asked leisurely, "You three look like you've run into big trouble." A flash of embarrassment crossed Griffin's face. He rubbed his hands, as if organizing his words. Lord Alliance Leader. No, Baron, he corrected his title, speaking more respectfully. We came this time to ask you for a favor, the beast tide this time. If it weren't for your timely warning and opening the black territory to us, the three of us, along with the villagers and soldiers we brought, might have already been swallowed by the beasts, with no bones left. A bitter and self-deprecating smile appeared on his face. After this life-and-death ordeal, we have seen ourselves clearly. Perhaps we are not suitable to be lords. In the face of real danger, we lack the strength, wisdom, and courage to protect our people. Hans also nodded firmly. Griffin is right, Lord Baron. If it weren't for you, my dozens of brothers wouldn't have survived. As a lord, I would only lead them to death. Emilia stepped forward as well. My lord, the villagers of Frost Territory, you gave them a second chance at life. Continuing to be a mere figurehead lord will only put those who trust me in danger again. We beg you to take us in. She slightly knelt, performing a standard subordinate's bow. Seeing this, Griffin and Hans also hesitated but knelt on one knee without hesitation, right hand over their chests, heads bowed. We three are willing to give up our status as lords, serve you as our master, and become vassals of the Pendragon family. In this life and this world, our loyalty is unwavering. The meeting hall was silent. Ilai looked at the three kneeling before him with deep eyes. The horror of the beast tide seemed to have completely shattered their illusion of independence. Choosing to submit voluntarily and seek protection is the most practical and wise decision they could make now. This clear understanding made Ilai respect them more. He paused silently, neither offering false excuses nor becoming overly excited, just nodding slowly. A simple word, but like a promise of great importance. Griffin and the others suddenly looked up, their eyes shining with excitement and relief. I accept your loyalty. Ilai stood up, walked to the three, and looked at them. From now on, Easton, Clive, and Frost will be officially under the protection of the Pendragon family. But you three will still manage your old territories for me. Thank you, Lord. They replied in unison, their voices full of emotion. However, Ilai continued, serving does not mean abandoning responsibility. Your original lands must be restored and developed quickly to support us. He returned to his desk, picked up a map. You each return with your original people and soldiers. Besides that, I will also assign each of you 1 Black Raven Knight and 10 veteran Blackland soldiers. Griffin and the others trembled. They thought maintaining their management roles was already difficult, but now they received additional support. Your grace is greatly appreciated. I would die to repay you. Griffin choked with emotion. Rest assured, Lord. Hans will build the territory as solid as a fortress. Hans pounded his chest. Frost will not fail your trust. Emilia solemnly promised. Go now. Ilai waved his hand. Bring my people back with hope. Yes, sir. The three responded in unison and strode out of the hall. Ilai watched their departing figures, exhaling softly. Gathering the surrounding strength, he took another firm step forward. As soon as he sat down to handle the piled-up documents, urgent footsteps sounded outside the door again. A tired messenger was led in by the guards. He took off the copper tube from his back and presented it with both hands. Sir, an urgent message from Lord Brandon, sent from Lucerne City. Ilai quickly took the message and read through it. Following the Lord's instructions, using the 75 soldiers you left behind as the core, we have urgently recruited 125 new soldiers, making a total of 200 to defend Lucerne, relying on the city walls for a strong defense. And since Lucerne is far from the forest, the attacking beast horde is about 400 strong, with scattered attacks, with the city walls. The defense battle was relatively easy, with only 9 soldiers lost and over 30 injured. The beast horde has been successfully repelled. Some beast meat and fur have been seized and stored. The city defenses are intact, and the people's confidence is gradually restored. However, the food supplies are slightly depleted and need replenishing. Phew. Eli finally relaxed completely. Lucerne City is safe. Brandon did a great job. This is undoubtedly the best news. He gently placed the letter on the table and looked out the window. In the valley, soldiers were still working together to dismantle the beast carcasses. Women and children were drying the pelts, and the faint sound of repairs on the distant city wall could be heard. Though the air was filled with a foul smell, it was not pleasant, but it was full of life. There was no grand victory declaration, no sweeping ambitions. At this moment, Eli only had a simple, almost luxurious thought. If only every day could be like this, without sudden disasters, without imminent war, just peacefully developing like this. How wonderful that would be. Sunlight streamed through the glass window, shining on his snowy white hair and his slightly tired but still sharp face, casting a gentle glow. This brief moment of peace and stability was a breath of fresh air bought with countless sacrifices. Eli, who had been working until now, massaged his aching temples. He pushed aside the last draft about the profit-sharing of the Lucerne City trading post. Finally, suddenly, a loud bang sounded as the sturdy oak door swung open forcefully, crashing against the wall. Eli, who had just relaxed, tensed instantly. He placed his right hand on the silver hilt at his waist and quickly stood up. A yellow-brown shadow, moving so fast it almost left an afterimage, suddenly darted past his feet. The creature was clear in sight now. It was very determined, jumping onto the large oak desk, knocking over papers, ink bottles, and feathers. Eli could finally see what this unexpected visitor was. A groundhog. It was unusually fat, round like a bag filled with grains. Its short, shiny, yellow-brown fur looked slick, and its tiny black eyes were spinning around. It had a bold look that didn't match its silly appearance. Maybe a bit arrogant? It spread its back legs, stood upright, paws on its hips, and puffed out its fluffy belly, glaring straight at Eli. Before Eli could ask what was happening, the fat groundhog suddenly lunged forward. Its furry head bumped firmly against Eli's forehead. Eli was pushed back slightly, frozen in place, forgetting to hold his sword. His mind went blank, only feeling how absurd everything was. How did this thing get past all the guards and find his study so precisely? And I got hit by it. Eli, are you okay? Ella, from the next room, was startled by the loud noise and hurriedly pushed the door open. Her purple eyes first swept over the messy desk and Eli. Then her gaze was caught by the round, cute, yellow-brown creature on the table. Wow. Ella's eyes lit up instantly, her worry replaced by surprise. So adorable, little mouse. Mouse. Those words seemed to ignite a powder keg. The groundhog on the desk instantly bristled, its short fur standing on end, looking like a furious ball of fluff. It suddenly turned its head, its tiny black eyes fixed on Ella, and its sharp voice almost pierced the air. Nonsense. You're the mouse. Your whole family is mice. I am a bear. A mighty, strong bear. Understand? You clueless woman. Talking. Animals. Eli's blue eyes shrank suddenly. He stared tightly at the fat groundhog that was speaking human words. His muscles tensed instantly, and a quiet fighting spirit seemed to flow within him. There was no warning from his intelligence system, and the guards outside the door didn't react. Is this thing an enemy or a friend? Ella was startled by the sudden roar, but the light in her purple eyes did not fade. Instead, it filled with surprise and a kind of gentle affection. Okay, she couldn't help but smile. It's a bear, a brave little bear, she said as she naturally picked up a small piece of cheese cracker. She tentatively offered it to the angry furball. Are you hungry? Would you like this? Humph. That's more like it. The groundhog's anger came quickly but went even faster. It sniffed its pink nose, suspiciously glanced at the cracker in Ella's hand, and then cautiously looked at Eli, as if assessing safety. In the end, the temptation of food overcame its caution. It reached out with its tiny front paws, grabbed the cracker that was only slightly smaller than its paw, and took a tentative bite. In the next second, it felt like time froze. The groundhog froze with its small paws clutching the cracker, eyes wide with surprise. Then, a sharper scream burst out. Delicious. So good. It's so tasty. It clutched the cheese cracker and rolled wildly on the smooth oak table. Its round body twisted nimbly, paws in the air, exposing its soft belly. It rolled and made happy, unclear humming sounds. Eli, clearly it was a fool. He watched this bizarre scene with a blank expression. Addo, Eli said in a deep voice. The door to the study was pushed open, and the guard Addo peeked in. Sir? I heard a loud noise just now. His gaze swept over the messy desk. When he saw the still rolling brownish fur ball, his expression froze, and his mouth opened slightly. This mouse. Sir, how did it get in? I've been outside the door the whole time. Not even a fly got in. A mouse? The rolling groundhog on the desk suddenly stopped, jumped upright, and shot fiery eyes at Addo. It quickly grabbed a scattered feather quill from the desk and threw it fiercely at Addo. I told you it's a bear. You idiot. Feather quill with ink spots drew a crooked line in the air. Ala didn't even lift his eyelids. He brushed his sword sheath at his side, accurately knocking the flying feather pen to the ground. Go to the kitchen. Ila's voice returned to its usual calm. Bring food. Meat, bread, cheese, fruit. Bring plenty. Hurry. Yes, sir. Aji looked at the ink-stained feather pen on the ground, then at the bear on the table, who was crossing his arms and glaring angrily at it. He felt like his view of the world was shattered. He swallowed hard, saluted stiffly, and almost scrambled out. Only one thought filled his mind. This world must be crazy. Ila's gaze returned to the finally quiet groundhog. He pulled out his chair and sat down again. All right. Ila's quiet voice made the groundhog stop nibbling on a cookie, its black eyes alert as it looked at him. This bear, he emphasized that word. Enough of the game. Now, introduce yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? How did you sneak into my study without a sound? And why? Are you looking for me? The groundhog licked its cookie crumbs from its small paws, still eager. Its tiny eyes flicked between Ila's serious face and Ella's gentle smile, as if deciding which was easier to talk to. Finally, it puffed out its round chest. Listen carefully, human lord. I am the most loved and trusted companion of the princess. The great Gulu. The princess? Ila's heart skipped a beat. He suppressed his swirling thoughts and tentatively asked, the princess? Which princess? Sorry, I haven't heard of her. Gulu. The groundhog seemed to find the joke hilarious. It exaggeratedly patted the table with its tiny paws, its black eyes full of disdain and disbelief. You are at least a half-elf. How could you not know about our noble, beautiful, and wise princess of the elves? It tilted its little head, as if recalling something. Where are your elf relatives? Didn't they tell you? You can't have just popped out of a stone, right, half-elf? Eli suddenly understood everything. Sure enough, the reason was the moonlight spring, which caused her to mistake him for a fairy hybrid. That was a surprising discovery. Maybe it could be a chance to get closer. I don't have any fairy relatives, Eli said calmly. I've never seen any. Gulu's proud attitude deflated like a burst balloon, and it looked embarrassed. Its small paws awkwardly scratched its round belly, and its tiny black eyes looked around nervously. Its voice also lowered, sounding a bit shy. Is that so? Then maybe I was mistaken? Probably. Sorry about that. It seemed a little embarrassed, muttering. I knew it. Why would the princess suddenly be interested in a human hybrid? Its quiet muttering sounded like a loud thunderclap in Eli's ears. A fairy princess interested in him. At that moment, Ella's gentle voice rang out. She lightly touched Gulu's damp little nose. Gulu-sama, why does your princess want to see Eli? Where should they meet? Her violet eyes sparkled, as if listening to a fun fairy tale. Why? Gulu was distracted by Ella's question. It straightened up, trying to look serious, with its paws supporting its fluffy chin. The princess's feelings are very mysterious. Maybe it's because. Its small eyes glanced at Eli quickly and then looked away again. Maybe she finds you nice? Or, thinks this place is okay? It spoke vaguely, clearly unsure itself. As for where to meet, Gulu's thoughts only lasted about 3 seconds. Its little belly suddenly made a loud gurgle sound. Oh no! It quickly covered its stomach with its paws, and its previous proud attitude collapsed instantly. Forget it. It's all your fault. Asking questions everywhere. I've traveled a long way to deliver this message, and now I'm starving. Hurry. Food. The cookie from earlier. And some meat. I need to eat to have the strength to think. I'm starving. It shouted and jumped anxiously on the table, its round body bouncing like a small ball. Ella was amused by its antics, covering her mouth with a smile, her eyes soft and happy. Al helplessly closed his eyes, feeling a vain throb on his forehead. A fairy princess? An invitation? The messenger sent. Just such a lively character? In the study, only the hungry shouts of Mr. Gulu the groundhog and Ella's gentle laughter remained. In the shadowed corner of the room, the air seemed to twist very slightly for a moment, like a tiny pebble dropped into calm water. Then everything returned to stillness. Adu finally returned, carrying a wooden tray almost as wide as his chest, piled high and wobbling dangerously. Gulu! A loud scream, loud enough to shake the roof. The groundhog on the table shot out like an arrow. Its small body burst with surprising strength, causing the heavy tray to shake. What happened next made Isle's mouth twitch slightly. The chubby bear, with a fierce attitude completely out of proportion to its size, pounced into the pile of food. Its tiny paws moved so fast they left only afterimages, tearing, scratching, biting. Its favorite white cheese was clutched in its arms, being fiercely licked with its tiny tongue, making satisfied purring sounds. It devoured everything in a frenzy, gobbling it all up. Finally, after the last piece of cheese was cleaned away, Gulu slowed down. He let out a contented burp, rich with milk aroma. Hick! Then, as if all his bones had been pulled out, he collapsed onto the tray in a heap, paws stretched out. His round belly was so full it looked like a balloon ready to burst, and his shiny fur was tight from overeating. He closed his eyes happily, paws gently stroking his astonishingly round belly. Al took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady. Gulu, do you remember now? The plump ball of fur seemed too tired to even nod, just slightly shook his round head. Al's brow relaxed a little, thinking they could finally get to the main point. Huff, huff, snore. A rhythmic snoring filled the entire study. Al's expression froze completely. He stared at the belly on the table that rose and fell with each snore, then looked at the pile of bones and leftovers in the tray beside it. A strong feeling of absurdity and helplessness swept over him. This isn't a groundhog. It must be a pig, right? The princess's beloved pet? Is that all? He rubbed his forehead with his hand, feeling resigned, and turned to Ella. Ella, Ili's voice carried a tired, almost resigned tone. This bear master seems to need a good rest. I'll leave it in your care. Ella nodded happily. She stepped forward, carefully avoiding the mess on the tray, gently picked up the sleeping fluff ball. Holding it, she turned to leave. When she reached the door to the study, she suddenly stopped. With clear purple eyes, she looked at Ili with a smile. Ili, her voice was soft, like a feather brushing the heart. The elf princess seems very interested in you. You probably won't. I won't. Ili cut off Ella's words firmly. I am completely devoted to Miss Ella. Ella's cheeks instantly flushed with 2 rosy clouds, like blooming roses. Feeling shy, she quickly looked down. She said nothing more, just held the sleeping bear and left the study lightly. Ili stood there, watching the quiet study, and let out a long sigh. He shook his head, shaking off the tangled thoughts, and looked back at the desk. Ink, grease, meat crumbs, bread crumbs. It was a mess. No servants were called. Ili rolled up his sleeves and took matters into his own hands. This calm moment, with some simple chores, helped him relax a little. When the last stain was cleaned and the study was finally tidy, Ili straightened up and looked out the window at the setting sun. Sebastian, the mysterious old butler, perhaps knew something? He left the Lord's fortress, crossed the busy valley, and headed straight to Sebastian's room. He knocked, but no answer. Pushing the door open, the room was empty. Ili stood in the empty room, silent for a moment, then gently closed the door. It seems that, for now, we can only rely on ourselves to solve the elf problem. Since the butler is missing, Eliso decided to slow down and start patrolling the territory freely. The wounds from the beast tide are healing quickly, and new energy is spreading everywhere. Near the edge of the valley, a new area is being actively built. Thick logs are standing upright, forming the frame of houses. This area is reserved for new slaves and future residents. In the original residential area, some freed villagers are strengthening their wooden houses with thicker walls and replacing the roofs with more durable ones, under the guidance of Old John's craftsmen. Old John himself is standing on the partially built city wall, loudly giving orders. His white beard bounces as he shouts. Many slaves and free people are busy inside and outside the walls, using large stones and mixed mud to raise and reinforce the barrier. The wall is now nearly a meter taller than before the beast tide, and its thickness has increased. Over 300 soldiers are standing in neat formations, changing positions on command. Spears are raised and lowered like a forest, and shields clash with dull thuds. Eliso's gaze passes over the training ground and looks toward the other side of the valley. There, the cultivated farmland is lush and green. The wheat has grown to about knee height, swaying in the sunset, looking healthy. Farmer Hardy is leading a group of experienced farmers, busy in the fields, carefully checking the seedlings, removing weeds, and watering the crops. The hope for a good harvest is growing amid the rich soil scent. "Sir, Lord," a hurried voice calls from nearby. Eliso stops and turns to look. A sturdy man is running over. It's Dast, the slave overseer responsible for animal dissection. "Dast," Eliso nods. "Is the dissection finished?" "Yes, sir." Dast nods loudly. "The last batch of bones has been boiled into broth and oil. Everything usable has been sorted and processed." "Good," Eliso says approvingly. "That's quite efficient." "How many exactly?" "Reporting, sir." Dast quickly reports. "Intact, tanned, thick beast hides. 673 in total. All kinds of beast fangs and sharp claws filled 4 large wooden barrels. The fat was boiled down into 10 barrels. Dried meat and smoked meat piled up in 3 temporary storage rooms. There were also 5 large barrels of bone broth oil. So much. Even though Ilai was mentally prepared, he was still surprised by these huge numbers. The treasure left by the beast tide was much more than expected, especially the nearly 500 beast skins and 3 large barrels of beast teeth and claws, which are difficult to handle. They not only take up space in the warehouse, but could also be damaged over time. Das also raised a concern at the right moment. "Sir, these beast skins and teeth. There are just too many. The warehouses are almost full, and as the weather warms, the skins can get moldy and rot if stored too long. What do you suggest we do?" Ilai looked at the soldiers in simple leather armor or cloth clothes on the training ground in the distance, then at the slaves and free people in the valley, who were dressed lightly. A clear plan quickly formed in his mind. "Das," Ilai said firmly, "listen carefully. Half of the beast skins, take them out. Immediately organize all the women who can sew, whether slaves or free, to work day and night. Use the strongest, most durable thread to sew simple beast skin vests, leg guards, and wrist guards. They don't need to look pretty, just practical, warm, and able to protect vital areas." Das straightened up excitedly. "Yes, sir. I will complete the task." Ilai nodded and continued giving orders. As for the remaining half of the beast skins, he paused briefly, then said, "Choose the best quality ones, store them separately, and keep them safe, paying attention to moisture and insects." "I will have use for these." Das immediately responded. "Understood, sir. I will store them carefully. These beast teeth and claws, along with the half of the beast skins you just mentioned to be sealed, divide 1/3 of the remaining skins that are of lesser quality, and pack them tightly." Ilai looked at him. "You personally lead a reliable team to escort this batch of beast skins and teeth to Thorn City. Find Karen, the supervisor of the North Star Trading House, or any other major steward who can make decisions. Tell them this is a special product from the Pendragon Lordship, and ask if they want to buy it. But remember, what you exchange should preferably be food, salt, iron, or tools." Using the spoils from the beast tide, he exchanged them for urgently needed supplies to develop the territory. This was undoubtedly the most cost-effective deal. Dax's dark face immediately lit up with excitement. "Yes, sir. I understand." Dax pounded his chest firmly. Go ahead, make arrangements quickly. Ilya waved his hand. Dax bowed again, then turned and strode away confidently, full of energy. The sunset's glow stretched Ilya's shadow long across the ground. He slowly looked over the rising city walls, the lively training grounds, and the thriving farmland. The road must be traveled step by step. That fat groundhog, calling itself Great Gulu, had slept soundly for 2 whole days and nights. Ilya visited it several times, each time unable to resist gently poking its bouncy belly. However, when the morning sun shone through the window on the 3rd day, only a dented cotton nest and a few remaining short brown hairs were left in the small basket. The Great Gulu, just like when it arrived, disappeared without a trace, leaving no note behind. When Ilya heard Ella's somewhat disappointed report, he only raised an eyebrow, his blue eyes calm and steady. It seems this bear might just be here to trick us for food. He didn't really mind much. Moreover, the snoring of this lively creature had been echoing through the fortress these days, and now that it was gone, it was much quieter. Busy tasks like an endless tide continued, but at this moment, a rare peaceful period had finally arrived. The city walls were being raised higher, crops were growing, soldiers were training, and houses were being built. Tanned animal hides were being carefully sewn into practical armor by skilled women, and the trading team heading to Thorn City had already set out. Tense nerves needed a short break, and the best way to relax was to pour excess energy into training. At the Obsidian Ridge training ground, the firm yellow earth surface warmed by the afternoon sun, sending out faint heat waves. Shouts and clashing weapons mixed together, creating a lively, powerful noise. In the center of the field, a section was cleared. Ilya, wearing only a sweat-absorbing linen shirt, with his long white hair tied back, held a heavy double-handed sword tightly with both hands. The sword's tip pointed slightly downward, and his body was poised, ready to strike. His opponent was Captain Buck. Buck was not wearing his signature black armor, just simple training clothes, but his presence was just as strong. Huh! Buck growled loudly, stepping forward without any fancy moves. He swung his training sword forcefully, tearing through the air, aiming straight at Ilya's head. This was the most basic attack, testing strength and skill. Ilya's pupils shrank. He chose not to block or fight back directly. Instead, he quickly changed his footwork, slipping sideways at a risky angle, narrowly avoiding the heavy sword that could cut through rock. At the same time, he flicked his wrist, and the heavy training sword shot out like a snake, using the momentum of the slide. He swiftly swung upward, aiming at Buck's side where the muscles were slightly exposed from his effort. Buck reacted incredibly fast. He flipped his wrist, and the heavy sword blocked downward like a shield, stopping Ilya's tricky counterattack. The force of the rebound traveled along the sword handle. Ilya grunted, his hand numb, but his eyes shone even brighter. Instead of giving up, he was full of fighting spirit. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and prepared again, facing Buck's storm of attacks head-on. Swings, cuts, lifts, stabs, blocks, dodges. The soldiers around had stopped their training, holding their breath and watching closely as the two figures clashed fiercely in the middle of the arena. Seeing their lord fight so bravely, able to hold his own against Captain Buck of the Golden Rank, a rare sight. Their lord was training desperately. What reason did they have to slack off? Buck's relentless assault lasted for a full 15 minutes. Ilya was like a rocky outcrop in a storm, constantly pushed back, staggering, but never giving up. He tried to use every bit of fighting energy in his body, applying every technique and footwork Buck had taught him, struggling under the huge pressure. Finally, Buck sheathed his sword and took a step back, stopping his attack. A faint look of admiration appeared on his face. Your progress since the recent beast tide, reaching high-level bronze, is now solid. Ilya leaned on his training sword, gasping heavily, sweat blurring his vision. But upon hearing Buck's comment, he forced a difficult smile at the corner of his mouth. The high-level bronze combat aura was flowing strongly within his body, and indeed, it had become much more solid and stable than before. He went to a nearby rest area, roughly wiped the sweat from his face with his sleeve, and sank his mind into his thoughts. A faint blue light screen silently unfolded. However, this time, a deep purple beam suddenly lit up. Purple. Kyle City Commander Amon has confirmed the change of control in Lusan City. It was mistakenly believed to be caused by the Western Border Army. Fearing the strength of the Western Border Forces, no action has been taken yet, but defenses in Kyle City have been strengthened, and scouts have been sent to investigate the situation in Lusan City. Kyle City. Amon. Eli's smile instantly disappeared. As expected, there is still residual trouble, and it's quite troublesome. It is a true border fortress, a key transportation hub. Its strategic importance and defensive strength are far beyond what Baron Gloom's Lusan City can compare to. That Rhine, able to hold Kyle City, is probably even more notorious and powerful than Gloom. But the phrase, mistakenly believed to be caused by the Western Border Army, in the intelligence gave Eli a new idea. Fearing the Western Border Forces? Not daring to act for now? Since they misjudged? Then perhaps we should just go along with their mistake. Kid. A familiar loud voice suddenly rang out from the edge of the training ground. It was Master Glenn, a sturdy, dwarf-like figure, walking briskly toward the center of the field. He was carrying a long, wrapped object covered with a thick cloth. Just in time. No need for me to come find you. Master Glenn quickly reached Eli. He tore off the thick cloth covering the long object in his hand. A long sword was revealed in the sunlight. The sword was slightly wider than a typical knight's sword, with smooth, simple lines, giving a sense of rugged strength. The blade was not the usual grayish-white steel, but shimmered faintly with a strange, very thin glow under the sunlight. The sword guard and handle were also newly made. Look at this. Master Glenn's voice was full of pride. This is what I've worked out. The future standard sword for the army. The prototype. He tapped the blade with his thick finger, producing a clear, long hum. Inside, he leaned close to Eli and lowered his voice. Master Lu has added a small amount of silver alloy. But just this little bit, huh? He suddenly thrust the sword into Eli's hands. Try it. Just try, and you'll see. Silver alloy? Eli's heart suddenly jumped. He immediately gripped the sword handle tightly. The sword felt heavy in his hand, with a great balance and perfect weight distribution. A burst of excitement lit up his eyes. Master Glenn really used silver alloy in mass-produced weapons. Eli looked at the soldiers watching nearby, and chose the closest young man. Here, sir. Lower hesitated for a moment, then confidently stepped forward. Give me the sword, Eli said simply. Lower unhesitatingly took off his standard iron sword from his waist, and handed it over with both hands. Everyone's eyes focused on the scene, full of curiosity and anticipation. The Lord wanted to try the new sword? Eli took Lower's well-maintained iron sword in his left hand and gripped the silver alloy sword made by Master Glenn in his right hand. He didn't pour in any fighting energy or use fancy techniques. He just swung it like chopping wood. Holding the new sword in his right hand, he aimed at the middle of the iron sword in his left hand and swung it down evenly. Clang crack. Under the watchful eyes of hundreds, Lower's sturdy iron sword suddenly broke into two like a fragile branch. The upper half of the sword clanged onto the ground. The break was smooth and shiny like a mirror. Hiss! Broken. Broken? Just like that, the training ground instantly burst into gasps of disbelief and exclamations. The soldiers' eyes widened, their faces full of shock. Lower's mouth was so open it could fit an egg, and he stared blankly at his longtime companion, the broken sword. Eli showed a satisfied smile. The effect was even better than he expected. He weighed the seemingly ordinary new sword in his hand and sincerely praised, Master Glenn, well done. Very good, ha ha. Master Glenn laughed loudly with pride. Of course. Just look at whose work this is. Next to him, Captain Bach also stepped forward, carefully examining the broken sword's smooth break and testing the sharp edge of the new sword with his finger. Very impressive. Tough and sharp. Far better than an ordinary iron sword. Eli nodded, then looked back at Lure, who was still in a dazed state. He stepped forward, under the watchful, almost envious eyes of hundreds of onlookers. He took the silver-inlaid sword that had just broken the iron sword, turned the hilt, and offered it to Lure. This sword belongs to you now, huh? Lure snapped out of his daze, looking at the hilt handed to him, and then at Eli. He was completely confused. Take it. Eli's tone was firm and unquestioning. Lure trembled all over and suddenly regained his senses. A wave of great joy and a heavy sense of responsibility flooded his chest. Without hesitation, he knelt on one knee, trembling slightly as he carefully and reverently took the sword as if accepting a sacred object. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Lure's voice choked with emotion as he tightly held the sword to his chest. Lure. Lure vows to follow the Lord to the end. Damn it. Good luck, Lure. Why wasn't I the one standing there? The crowd immediately erupted into cheers and jeers, filled with envy and jealousy. Countless eyes burned like flames, scorching Lure kneeling on the ground and the sword in his arms. They wished they had been the ones called to receive the sword. Ely watched this lively scene, a slight smile on his lips. He reached out and gently patted Lure's trembling shoulder. Lure, his voice was soft, but carried a strange comforting power. Use it well. Protect yourself, and also protect your home and comrades behind you. He paused. Then, looking into Lure's reddened eyes from excitement, added with a gentle smile, I wish you always good luck. The atmosphere on the training ground instantly exploded. Loud cheers and good-natured teasing of, good luck, Lure, rang out one after another. Lure held the sword, his face flushed. He was both excited and embarrassed, but his eyes were incredibly determined. In the study of the LaRoche residence in Thorn City, Lucius sat straight behind a large desk, like a marble sculpture, cold, hard, and lacking vitality. His eyes carefully examined the letter spread out before him. Baron Pendragon from the Obsidian Territory. A large herd of beasts is emerging deep in the Nightsong Forest. The size and ferocity far surpass previous records. The Obsidian Territory, relying on city walls and oil moats, has successfully repelled them after heavy losses. Luzon City was also attacked but held firm behind its walls. The return of the beast tide is probably not a coincidence. The knight should be cautious. Other areas in the western border may face similar disasters. Lucius's long fingers gently traced the words, beast tide, their tips cold. The beast tide, he repeated softly. Sitting opposite him, Marquis Marcus, impatiently flipping through a stack of military supply lists, looked up, his thick eyebrows furrowed. Isn't that thing long gone? An old relic that disappeared with the elves. Did Ilena write about it in her letter? He asked gruffly, feeling both unfamiliar and wary of the term. Lucius didn't answer immediately. He gently pushed the letter toward Marcus, but kept his gaze fixed on the deep, ancient, and dangerous forest beyond. The thing that vanished long ago is reappearing, he said slowly. It often means the balance has been broken. The old order is loosening, and a new, or perhaps an even older one, is trying to return. Marcus picked up the letter and quickly scanned it, his rugged face showing surprise. Wow, so many beasts. This kid, he's impressive. He really managed to hold them off. He put down the letter and looked at Lucius. Sir, this reappearance of the beast tide, does it really mean some big change, as you said? Lucius withdrew his gaze, looked at Marcus, as if he wanted to smile, but also sighed. In the end, he let out a long breath. Troubling times. He paused. Then his tone returned to his usual calm. But since the Obsidian Territory and Luzon City can fend them off on their own, it at least shows that this outbreak hasn't reached the scale of the ancient legends, which swept across thousands of miles. For our entire western border, for now, it's still manageable. Marcus nodded in agreement. That's right. As long as it's not an overwhelming invasion. With our city defenses and guys like Ilena standing at the front, it's not a big problem. He picked up the military supply list again, as if the threat of the beast tide was already behind him. Lucius's gaze returned to Ely's letter, his fingertips brushing over the signature, Pendragon, again, a faint, complex glimmer flashing in his eyes. He was silent for a few seconds before speaking in a nearly whispering tone. Moreover, from another point of view, this might actually be a good thing. Good thing? Marcus looked up in surprise, his rough face full of confusion. Is a beast tide still a good thing? Lucius picked up the cold tea beside him and took a sip. I fear the territories near the forest have all experienced some size of beast tide. The pressure from these beast tides is like a sword hanging over their heads. He put down his teacup, the ceramic clinking softly against the table. This can effectively prevent some emerging forces from rapidly growing instability and eventually becoming uncontrollable. Marcus paused, then burst into loud laughter. Ha ha! Lord Lucius, your heart really is cold. He pointed at Lucius, with a hint of teasing. You don't seem to like Ely very much? Back in the council hall, you even said it was wise for him to change his surname to Independence. Lucius's expression remained unchanged. He calmly met Marcus's teasing gaze, his voice steady. Appreciation is a personal preference. Stability and order in the Western lands are my duty. I am myself, and the Western lands are the Western lands. He paused before adding, personal feelings should not override the bigger picture. That's the most basic quality of a ruler. Marcus's laughter gradually subsided. He looked thoughtfully at Lucius's expressionless face, then shook his head. You politicians, your hearts are so dirty. Then he stopped bothering with the topic and lowered his head to continue dealing with the complicated list. Black Obsidian Territory, Lord's Fortress Study. The flickering candlelight cast Ely's shadow working at his desk on the wall. He had just finished the last document regarding the resource transfer in Lucent City, rubbing his sore eyes. But the intelligence from Rhine City still lingered heavily in his mind. Since you think it's the regular army of the Western lands. Ely dipped his finger in ink and quickly began writing on a new piece of sheepskin parchment. Brandon, immediately hang the Roach family's roaring golden lion banner at the highest and most visible point on the city wall of Lucerne. No need to explain, just do it. Be cautious with all matters concerning the territory. Ely Pendragon. The pen paused slightly at the signature, ink slightly darker. Hanging the Roach family's banner atop Lucerne is a blatant show of power, using influence to intimidate others. It's a risky move. If Sir Lucius notices the intention behind it, the consequences could be serious. But to buy more time for development and to intimidate Rhine near Care City, this seems the most effective method right now. Perhaps it also shows Ely's loyalty. Every day, he remains loyal and respectful to the Roach family. After finishing the last letter, Ely carefully blows on the ink to dry it, then rolls the letter tightly and ties it with a silk cord. He walks to the window and pushes it open. Cry. A clear call pierces the night sky. The cold ball, like a ghost blending into the darkness, silently lands on the window frame, tilting its small head, black obsidian eyes fixed on the letter tube in Ely's hand. Ely attaches the tube to a copper ring made for the cold ball's claw, gently stroking its smooth, cold feathers. Cold ball, go to Lucerne City. Find Brandon, he whispers. This clever raven, after many trips to Lucerne City, has memorized the route. From now on, regular contact with Lucerne City can be maintained without relying on messengers, thanks to this sky messenger. The cold ball seems to understand, gently nuzzling Ely's finger with its beak. Then it spreads its broad black wings and silently glides into the deep night sky. Watching the cold ball disappear, Ely gently closes the window, blocking out the cool air. The study falls silent again. Only the faint crackling of the candle remains. He looks around the tidy yet empty study, his gaze sweeping over Sebastian's usual sturdy wooden chair. That mysterious old butler. Since returning from the depths of the Night Song Forest, he seems to have vanished completely. Just like every silent departure, without warning and leaving no trace. Ely's brow furrows slightly. That encounter deep in the forest, the strange scene of beasts worshipping, the whispering that directly affects the soul. Could it be that the unfathomable presence has somehow influenced him? Or perhaps, he discovered something more urgent that must be dealt with immediately? Or maybe, his very existence is somehow connected to the secret deep in the forest, a connection he has yet to understand? The old butler has always been very unobtrusive, so much so that people often overlook him. Wait, could that whisper in his mind be the princess spoken of by Galoo? It's very likely. As his thoughts drifted, a gentle weight suddenly pressed on his left shoulder. Ely was momentarily startled and turned his head. Ella had quietly come up behind him. She looked exhausted, standing there with her forehead gently resting on his shoulder, most of her weight leaning on him. Her long, tired eyelashes lay quietly over her eyelids, breathing steady and light. A few soft strands of hair brushed against Ely's neck, feeling slightly ticklish. His gaze softened instantly. He carefully turned around, worried he might wake her. Then, he reached out with his arms, slipping one hand through her leg bend and wrapping the other around her slender but resilient waist, gently holding the sleeping Ella. She seemed to sense the movement and unconsciously let out a soft whimper in her sleep. Her little head instinctively nuzzled, seeking a more comfortable position, and her breathing quickly became calm and steady again. She trusted him completely, without any defenses. Eli held her securely and quietly walked out of the study, through the silent corridor, heading toward their room. He pushed open the door and gently laid Ella on the soft, wide bed, tucking her in carefully. Looking at her peaceful face, Eli leaned down and placed a feather-like kiss on her smooth forehead. Outside the door, the night was deep and quiet. He raised his hand and extinguished the last wall lamp in the corridor. Darkness gently enveloped everything. Today's work ends here, he whispered to himself. There are more important things waiting ahead. Thud, thud, thud. A series of frantic, rhythmless knocks shattered the silence at the top of the Lord's fortress. The force behind the knocking was fierce, causing the heavy oak door to creak and tremble under the assault. Two people sleeping together in bed are suddenly awakened. Eli suddenly opens his eyes, and his blue gaze sharpens instantly like an eagle in the moment of waking. Ella lets out a tiny gasp, her long eyelashes trembling, and her purple eyes filled with confusion and a hint of unease. Hey, the sun's already high. Get up, girl. A sharp, piercing voice, like a spell, rushes in. Ella immediately wakes up, a helpless smile on her face. It's Gulu. She's back. Eli's eyebrows furrow into a tight knot, annoyed by this unruly little creature. Ella gently nudges him, quickly pulling back the blanket and getting up. Morning light filters through the window, outlining her slender, graceful silhouette. She grabs her clothes from beside the bed and quickly dresses, her fair skin flashing briefly in the soft light. Eli's gaze lingers on her for a moment, then is replaced by anger at the constant noise outside the door. He turns over, moving swiftly and silently, not even bothering to wear a robe, just a thin dark shirt and pants. He reaches out and grabs the silver sword leaning against the bedpost, the cold scabbard in his hand. Ella just fastens the last strap of her dress, tidies her slightly messy silver hair, and turns around. At that moment, bang! A deafening explosion. Eli's right foot kicks forcefully against the inside of the closed door. The heavy oak door is struck like by a battering ram, and with a loud crash, it swings open. Ouch! Outside the door, Gulu, standing on tiptoe with her tiny paws clenched into fists, was about to strike again, but was caught off guard. She only saw a huge dark figure rushing toward her with the wind. Her round body was like a ball shot out with great force, and she squealed as she was slammed away by the door. Gulu! Ugh! She tumbled awkwardly on the smooth stone floor of the corridor, rolling several times, paws in the air, belly up. How dare you? Do you know who I am? How dare you? Gulu struggled to turn over, her tiny eyes blazing with fire, pointing at the door, ready to curse loudly. But her words stopped abruptly. Eli's figure appeared in the doorway, his tall silhouette blocking the morning light coming through the corridor window, radiating a strong sense of authority. He held the cold tip of the sword sheath in his right hand. It was firmly pressed against Gulu's nearly negligible neck. Her arrogant attitude was instantly extinguished, as if poured over with a bucket of cold water. Speak. Eli's voice was colder than the sword sheath, without any emotion. Who are you exactly? The air seemed to freeze. Only Gulu's teeth chattering remained in the corridor. I. Gulu's voice trembled uncontrollably, with a hint of crying. I'm really sent by the princess. Great Gulu. I didn't lie to you. Its small paws futilely tried to pull away the sword sheath on its neck, but its strength was like an ant trying to move a tree. I remembered last night. The place. The meeting spot. I came back just to tell you. Humph. Ili sighed, easing the grip on the sword sheath. This mole rat was unpredictable and secretive, making it hard to trust. Ili, Ella's gentle voice broke the stalemate. She had tidied up her appearance and quickly walked to Ili's side, gently tugging on his sleeve. Let it go first. It looks very scared. Ili looked at Ella's worried face, then back down at the frightened mole rat on the ground, almost fainting. Ella's plea was like a feather, softly touching the strings of his heart. He retracted his wrist, and the sword sheath left Gulu's neck. Gulu suddenly took a deep breath. Its whole body went limp on the ground, and it gasped heavily, with panic still lingering in its black bean eyes. Ella squatted down, took a piece of cheese with a strong milky aroma from her small pocket. She offered the cheese to Gulu, her voice gentle as if soothing a hurt little animal. Great Gulu, don't be afraid. Want a bite to calm down? The aroma of the cheese seemed magical. Gulu twitched its pink nose, and the terror in its black bean eyes was quickly replaced by a struggle. On one side was anger and fear towards Ilya, and on the other was the irresistible temptation of the delicious food. In the end, the power of the food won. It cautiously looked at Ilya, then at Ella's gentle, harmless smile. Carefully, it stretched out its small paw and quickly grabbed the piece of cheese. Crack, crack. The quick, nibbling sounds echoed in the quiet corridor. The delicious cheese quickly eased Gulu's shock, and his tense body gradually relaxed. Seeing him busy eating, Ilya's initial anger and caution, which had been forced awake, mostly disappeared. He paused silently, then spoke in his usual calm voice, with a hint of apology. Earlier, I overreacted. Sorry, Lord Gulu. Humph. Gulu paused his cheese eating, snorted softly through his nose, and lifted his small head. Young people these days are so quick-tempered. They draw their swords at the slightest provocation. They have no respect for elders or love for small animals. Back in my day, he seemed about to boast about his glorious past, but when he saw Ilya's expressionless face, he wisely swallowed his words and continued munching on the cheese. Lord Gulu, where did you go yesterday? I couldn't find you anywhere, Ella asked curiously. Gulu raised his head. I just wandered around a bit. He quickly finished a piece of cheese. Gulu licked his small paws. Ella, you are so kind. Lord Gulu will protect you. She looked at Ella's empty hands with lingering admiration, finally feeling more relaxed. All right, Ilya interrupted, sensing Gulu might still want more food. Do you remember the place? Can we leave now? Since it was true, he needed to find out the princess's true intentions as soon as possible. Gulu patted his round belly with his small paw, tried to stand straight, and cleared his throat. Of course, deep in the Nightsong Forest. A very special place. His tiny black eyes flicked between Ilya and Ella. Then he raised a paw and pointed at Ilya. You come with me. Only you. This is the princess's order. Ilya's eyebrows immediately furrowed. Venturing alone into the core area of the beast-tide outbreak, where unknown elven powers hide. This risk is indeed significant. If Sebastian were here, that deep and mysterious old butler, at least, could give him some confidence. Finally, Ilya slowly nodded. All right, when do we leave? Since choosing this path, there is no reason to turn back. The elf princess might be the key. Let's go now. Gulu seemed pleased with Ilya's quick decision, waving his small paw. While it's cool in the morning, I will lead the way, Ilya. Ella's purple eyes were full of worry. She stepped forward and gently held Ilya's hand. Ilya held her cool hand back firmly, giving her a steady and reassuring look. Don't worry. I'll be back soon. The territory. I leave it to you. He believed Ella could keep things steady behind. Ella pushed down her unease. She took a deep breath, nodded, released his hand, and took a step back. Be careful. Hey, are we leaving or not? Stop dawdling. Gulu impatiently hopped ahead, urging them on. Let's go, Ilya said without hesitation. Ella watched as the tall and short figures disappeared around the staircase corner. Meanwhile, Gulu hopped down the stairs, but in his little mind, he was still thinking about last night. He wasn't just wandering around randomly. Yesterday, he had explored almost all of the Obsidian territory, from the reinforced city walls to the busy training grounds, from the orderly residential areas to the thriving farms. He saw soldiers' respectful gazes, the rare peaceful smiles on slaves and free folk during their breaks, and women and children in relatively safe areas. There was no chaos or violence like in the human cities among the elves. Instead, there was a strange sense of order and unity that was hard to describe. Oomph, no wonder the princess is interested, Gulu muttered to himself, unconsciously scratching his belly. This young person does seem capable, though a bit hot-tempered. Hey, what are you staring at? Hurry up and lead the way. Ilya's impatient voice came from behind. Coming. Why are you in such a rush? Young people just lack patience. Gulu quickly put aside his thoughts and sped up his hopping. With Ilya, they headed toward the depths of the Nightsong Forest, facing the rising dawn. Deep in the Nightsong Forest, the towering ancient tree's branches almost blocked out all sunlight, leaving only patches of broken, dappled light. Eli walked steadily, stepping softly on the thick, soft moss, making faint sounds. Behind him, the chubby figure was dragging along slowly, panting with every step. "Hey, human," Gulu's sharp, squeaky voice rang out countless times. "My legs are almost broken. Can't you show some knightly spirit like humans do? Just carry me a little bit." "Just a little." Eli didn't turn his head and kept walking without stopping. "This is the fourth time I've said no." He was too lazy to explain. Gulu kept asking for things along the way. Food, rest, to be carried. More trouble than serving a real princess. You're cold. You're heartless. You're mistreating a little animal." Gulu was so angry it stomped its feet and waved its tiny paws in frustration, but it only hit the air. It looked at Eli's tall, straight back and could only hang its head in sadness. Resigned, it continued to shuffle along, muttering complaints in a low voice, like a mosquito humming. They walked silently for a while longer. Eli's gaze swept over the increasingly ancient giant trees around them. His caution about the deep forest never eased. Suddenly, he broke the silence, speaking softly. "Gulu." "What?" Gulu replied irritably without looking up. "You say you're the elf princess's most loved and trusted companion. So, your strength should be very powerful, right? At least, not like now." These words hit Gulu's tail like a sharp poke. "Yow!" It let out a short, sharp cry, like a firecracker igniting, and jumped up suddenly. Its whole body turned into a yellow-brown flash, crashing hard into Eli's leg. Bang! Sounded the impact. Eli remained perfectly still, not even frowning. Gulu was knocked dizzy by the recoil, its eyes spinning, and it plopped down on the ground. Holding its aching little head, its black eyes blazed with anger as it stared at Eli. "You don't understand. My power is sealed." "Sealed, do you hear me? That's a very powerful seal. When I break free, I could press you to the ground with just one finger. Darn human. How dare you underestimate the great Gulu?" It waved its small paws angrily and impatiently. Eli's lips twitched slightly, almost unnoticed. A seal? He doubted it very much. The two, or rather, one person and one mouse, fell silent again, walking one after the other through the dense forest. They traveled for about half an hour more. Suddenly, Eli's steps stopped without warning. Oh, Gulu, who was busy walking and muttering about annoying humans and "I'm starving," was caught off guard when its round head bumped into Eli's sturdy calf. "Why did you bump into me?" Gulu held its aching forehead and blamed Eli. But when its eyes crossed Eli's leg and saw what was ahead, all its complaints and anger disappeared instantly. Eli ignored it. His gaze, his entire focus, was fixed on the scene before him. Ahead, the dense primal forest seemed to be forcibly cut off by an invisible giant hand. A huge, breathtaking lake suddenly appeared in view. The water was a deep, pure blue-green, like the finest jade melted and spread across the land. It was so calm there were no ripples, smooth as a mirror, reflecting the sky above, broken into fragments by ancient tree branches and the lush forest around. The shoreline was winding and dotted with countless unknown flowers, glowing faintly or emitting strange scents. The air was so fresh, as if it had been thoroughly washed, filled with a strong sense of life. The perfect silence and grandeur made Eli's mind go blank for a moment. He had seen the bleakness of deserts, the smoke of obsidian territories, but he had never seen such a pure, breathtaking natural wonder. Beautiful, that was the only word he could think of at this moment. Gulu snorted proudly, holding its tiny paws, hopping to Eli's feet, its small head held high. "See, tiny human, this is the real good place. Much better than your stinky, stone-built cities. This is a gift from nature, a sacred place for elves." After bragging, it paid no attention to Eli, who was still immersed in shock, and quickly ran to the clear lake. Facing the mirror-like surface, it shouted loudly with all its strength. "Hey, I brought the person, Valerian. Open the door." A sharp, high-pitched voice echoes over the vast lake, reaching far and wide. Eli was awakened by the shout, and in the next moment, his pupils shrank to pinpoints. The calm, deep blue water in front of Gulu suddenly began to rise without warning. The lake water churned as if boiling, splitting apart. A huge head covered in dark blue diamond-shaped scales slowly emerged from the water. Water droplets fell like a waterfall from its smooth, cold scales. The outline of the head, fierce, majestic, just like in the legends. Its large eyelids slowly lifted, revealing a pair of giant pupils like golden vertical slits. A cold, ancient gaze filled with an indescribable, terrifying pressure fixed tightly on Eli standing at the shore. Eli felt a primal, irresistible fear wash over him like a tidal wave. His silver hand trembled uncontrollably. A dragon? Under the lake in Nightsong Forest. Is there really a sleeping dragon? Just as the huge head fully surfaced, connecting to its long, elegant neck, Eli noticed a key difference. Below the head, the body was connected, no claws, no sturdy limbs, only a long, powerful body covered in dark blue scales, winding like a giant python. It looked like a dragon, but without claws. What is it? Valerian's molten gold vertical pupils simply glanced indifferently at Eli. Then, the giant head slightly turned toward Galoo, as if confirming something. Next, in Eli's terrified eyes, Valerian, the beast, opened its massive mouth filled with sharp, deadly teeth toward the lake in front of it. No roar, no growl. The lake in front of it seemed to be parted by an invisible force. A transparent staircase, made of flowing water, extended downward from the lake surface. On both sides of the staircase, the water flowed like crystal walls. Eli's mind instantly flashed with this image, and he was overwhelmed with shock. "Stop staring. Follow me," Gula shouted back at Eli. It took the first step with its short legs, jumping onto the magical staircase made of flowing lake water. Eli looked at the passage leading to the unknown lake bottom, then at the cold, deep golden eyes at the entrance. The pressure in that gaze hadn't fully disappeared, like an invisible chain wrapped around him. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to suppress the trembling of his legs wanting to run away. He cursed his own cowardice silently. Having fought in the beast tide and faced death threats, how could he be afraid now? He stepped forward, one step at a time, onto the flowing staircase. Under his feet was moving yet steady water, feeling icy and strange. On both sides, water walls constantly flowed and changed, with huge water plants swaying like forests and colorful fish swimming peacefully nearby. This scene reminded Eli of the underwater tunnel from his past life. But it was more magical, more surreal. The passage extended downward, the light gradually dimmed, but the lake water seemed to emit a gentle glow, not appearing sinister. After walking several hundred steps, suddenly, the view opened up. At the end of the passage was a large dry space. In the center stood an archway carved from a jade stone that emitted a soft white light. A small paw pressed against the giant door. A strange glow flashed, and the door slowly opened. It looked back at Eli, who was following behind, a hint of cleverness flashing in its tiny black eyes. It deliberately cleared its throat. Kid, since you're here," it proudly patted the jade door with its paw. "Just wait quietly for your end. Inside there are, all right, Galoo." A voice like wind chimes ringing in a quiet mountain valley echoed in the open space. It was the ethereal whisper from deep within the Nightsong Forest, which had once directly touched his soul. Galoo's threatening words suddenly caught in his throat, and it shrank its neck. It made a face at the front, clearly unhappy about being interrupted. As this voice sounded, the space ahead slightly twisted. Then, in Eli's disbelief, the air above the tall jade base in the palace's center rippled like water waves. A figure suddenly appeared silently and without warning, as if she had always been there. She sat gracefully on a throne carved from a single, pure crystal. Her long hair, silver and flowing like a waterfall of moonlight, nearly touched the ground. Her features were so delicate, like the most perfect work of a creator, with every line radiating a beauty beyond the mortal world. Her eyes, like the deepest starry sky, calm and still. She wore a simple, elegant silver dress that outlined her slender, perfect figure. Her presence seemed to embody the very idea of beauty. When Eli's gaze fell on that figure, my mind went completely blank. I could even feel my heart skip a beat. But my strong willpower immediately took over. I lowered my eyes. I forced myself to suppress the almost worshipful impulse in my heart. Taking a deep breath, I placed my right fist over my chest and bowed deeply to the figure on the throne. Alai Pendragon, greetings to the princess. Alai Pendragon, greetings to the princess. The respectful words echoed through the empty space. Then, a gentle yet irresistible force straightened his bowed body firmly. On the throne, Princess Eileen looked at him calmly. No need for such formality. Her gaze shifted to Galu, who was trying hard to puff out his chest and straighten up, with a hint of helplessness in her tone. Galu is stubborn and lively, and I suppose he has caused you quite a bit of trouble along the way. Hey, Your Highness, I didn't. Galu immediately jumped, paws on hips, protesting loudly. I completed my task diligently. I was almost cut down by that fierce human. It's him who caused me trouble. Iliai's gaze swept calmly over the excited Galu, his voice steady and sincere. Your Highness, you are too kind. Galu is naturally innocent, lively, and adorable, and he paused, speaking smoothly and naturally. He is strong and brave, escorting us all the way, doing his duty. It is an honor for Pendragon. Ha ha. Ha ha. As soon as Iliai finished speaking, the angry Galu suddenly burst into laughter. Human boy, you finally have good judgment. Ha ha. I am powerful and mighty. Ha ha. It laughed loudly, rolling back and forth, its small body tumbling like a runaway ball of yarn. On the throne, Irene's perfect face, like a carved sculpture, softened slightly, and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She lightly shook her head and let out a tender sigh. Clearly, Ili was talking nonsense with his eyes wide open, yet he looked serious, which made her find it a bit funny. The atmosphere quietly eased. Ili keenly noticed this. He no longer hesitated and directly got to the point. Your Highness, may I ask why you summoned Pendragon? Irene's face returned to calm. She didn't answer Ili's question directly. Her starry eyes, like the night sky, fell on Ili's snowy white hair, and she spoke softly. Are you an elf? Here it is. The key question. Ili's heart tightened. Luckily, he was already prepared with his words. He slightly opened his mouth, ready to admit to a possible misunderstanding. No. A clear, firm word suddenly burst out of him. Ili's pupils shrank sharply. What's going on? His body. It felt as if an invisible force was controlling him. He looked in shock at the calm, starry eyes on the throne, feeling completely seen through. He could only watch helplessly as his mouth moved uncontrollably. I am not an elf. I just happened to find and absorb a moonlight spring from an elf relic. What? Galu suddenly sat up from the ground, eyes wide with surprise. Moonlight spring? You actually drank from our elf tribe's sacred spring? That's a supreme treasure only royal bloodlines can bathe in. No wonder. No wonder Valerian looked at you more than once. You. It stammered, trembling with its tiny paws, as if Ili had committed a terrible crime. Ili's heart sank to the bottom. He stiffened in place, feeling the double pressure from Galu's screams and Irene's calm gaze. He knew that in front of this mysterious and powerful elf princess, he had completely revealed himself. From the very beginning of this negotiation, he had no leverage, and now he was in an even worse position. Without hesitation, Eligo decisively knelt on one knee. He lowered his head and said, Your Highness, regarding the Moonlight Sacred Spring, I truly did not mean to offend. But since it is a fact, I am willing to accept all consequences. He lowered his stance completely, leaving the decision entirely to her. Inside the jade space, everything was silent. On the throne, Eileen quietly watched the white-haired human below. After a moment, her ethereal voice sounded again, calm and emotionless. The Moonlight Sacred Spring is indeed the highest sacred object of our elf race. Over many years, very few springs have been left on Earth. Finding one and successfully absorbing its essence is your fate. Her tone was very flat. This calmness slightly eased the tension in Ili's heart. She did not immediately unleash her anger. But, Eileen continued, fate is fate, but there must be an explanation. Ili's heart tightened again, and he held his breath, focusing intently. Eileen's lips seemed to curve into a sly smile. Over 500 years ago, a brave human entered our sacred land and stole a very important treasure. 500 years ago? Ili looked up, his blue eyes filled with questions. Eileen's gaze seemed to carry a hint of amusement. That human's name, I believe you've heard of. His name is Caesar Aurora. This name exploded like thunder in Ely's mind. The founding emperor of the Orlando Kingdom? Ancestor of the royal Aurora family? Your Highness, Ely's voice was hoarse with shock. Are you saying I should go deal with the royal family? Find the stolen treasure? It sounded like a fairy tale. Sending him to confront the very foundation of a kingdom? That was more absurd than slaying a dragon. Please, Your Highness, just kill me, Ely said with a nearly hopeless calm. Suddenly, Eileen couldn't hold back her laughter, which sounded like a gentle stream falling onto a jade plate, instantly breaking the tense atmosphere. Of course not now, she said with a teasing tone. I just woke up. Why rush everything now? You. Her gaze swept over Ely. You're too weak. Ely. Although he was looked down upon, a heavy weight in his heart suddenly lifted. As long as he didn't have to send himself to die immediately, it was okay. Right now, you only need to do one thing. Eileen's voice returned to calm. Keep trying to live. Work hard to become stronger. Work hard to develop your territory. When your strength is enough to catch my attention, I will naturally tell you what to do. Ely felt a bitter taste in his mouth. The cost of the Moonlight Spring was heavier than he expected. A chain, unknown when it would fall, was inexplicably placed around his neck. It bound him tightly to this mysterious elven princess. But did he have a choice? In the face of an absolute power gap, in front of the unavoidable truth of the Moonlight Spring, no. He took a deep breath, lowered his head again, and his voice regained its usual calm. I understand. I will follow your Highness's orders. Good. Eileen seemed somewhat satisfied with his attitude. She stood up gracefully. Remember my name, Eileen. If you need anything in the future, I will contact you. Yes, Your Highness Eileen, Ely replied respectfully. Oh, by the way, Eileen suddenly remembered something. Her slender, jade-like finger casually waved in the air. A slight twist of space occurred. In Ely and Gulu's surprised gazes, a long sword with an ancient, weathered appearance and a sense of age appeared out of thin air on the empty ground in front of Eileen. But this sword was not just placed normally. Its tip was downward, deeply embedded in a grayish-white boulder about half a meter high. The sword's blade fit perfectly into the stone, as if they were one. Nice to meet you. Eileen's voice carried a hint of mischief. I have a gift for you. It is said. She pointed to the sword stuck in the stone. This is the sword of the king, passed down by the elves. Ancient prophecy says only a true king can pull it out of the stone. You dare to try? Gulu's black bean eyes immediately lit up. Curious, he leaned closer to the sword in the stone and tentatively poked the cold hilt with his small paw. Eli's gaze fell on the legendary sword embedded in the stone, calm and steady. The words of the old butler echoed in his mind. Yes, the gift of fate always comes with a price. He remained silent for a few seconds, then looked up at Aaron. His voice was calm. Your Highness, I think. Perhaps you are mistaken. Oh, Aaron raised an eyebrow, seeming a bit surprised by this answer. Not everyone who pulls out this sword can become a king. Eli said each word carefully. But only the sword in the hands of a true king is the real sword of the king. He glanced again at the simple, ancient sword stuck in the ordinary stone. This sword itself doesn't decide who is the king. After he finished speaking, the space inside the jade stone fell into a brief silence. Gulu, the little clawed creature, froze in midair, its big black eyes wide with surprise. Suddenly, a ripple from the sword's energy caused it to fall to the ground. This sword, it seems to be angry. In front of the throne, Aaron's calm and cunning expression was replaced for the first time by shock. She quietly looked at Eli, gazing for a long time. Her eyes no longer looked down on him, but carried a complex, hard-to-understand curiosity. You're right, Eli. After a long pause, Aaron's ethereal voice sounded again, carrying an indescribable meaning that was different from before. She gently waved her hand, and the ancient sword in the stone, along with the large rock, disappeared silently into the air, as if it had never been there. Without any extra words, a soft light enveloped Eli, and the space around him slightly twisted. In the next moment, Eli's figure vanished from the spot. The jade space returned to its original silence. Bah! Gulu pouted at where Eli had disappeared and snorted disdainfully. Acting so cool. The princess doesn't even give him face. Not grateful at all. He's probably just afraid he can't pull it out, It jumped back to Aaron's feet and asked, "Your Highness, what do you think of him? He's got a bad temper and looks fierce, but he seems pretty clever, and he's managing the territory quite well." It scratched its tiny belly with its paw and added in a serious tone, "Moreover, speaking of which, having absorbed the moon spring, he should now be considered the only male elf. Our elven race's continuation also." He hadn't finished speaking. Suddenly, an invisible force struck his round body. Ah! With a short, sharp scream, the great Gulu Lord was like a fluffy ball shot out forcefully. He was firmly slammed into the smooth, hard jade wall in the distance. His whole body was embedded, leaving only a silhouette with limbs spread wide and tail hanging down. Eileen's gaze remained fixed on where Ilya disappeared. Deep in his starry eyes, swirling complex emotions could be seen. Finally, he whispered softly, almost inaudibly, "Interesting human." Ilya's figure suddenly appeared by the lake. Behind him, the lake, like a giant emerald embedded deep in the forest, remained calm and still. He instinctively raised his hand and rubbed his temples. The slight pain from pressing his fingertips told him clearly, this was not a dream. All of this was real. "Where's Gulu?" Ilya looked around. The noisy groundhog hadn't appeared with him. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, showing a self-deprecating smile. He wanted to ask about the beast tide that almost destroyed the black collar, whether it had anything to do with elves. But before he could speak, the other side casually sent him away. He muttered softly, shaking off those distant and unrealistic thoughts. Elven princess, dragon, royal family. These existences are too high-level. Right now, he was just a small baron who had just found his footing in the wilderness. He had already paid the price for the moon spring. The only thing he could do now was walk steadily on his path. He took one last look at the beautiful lake, then turned and walked firmly back along the way he came. The tall, ancient trees closed behind him, blocking out that mysterious blue-green. When the familiar voices of the Black Collar Valley faintly reached his ears, an indescribable sense of relief flooded through him. From afar, the stone wall at the edge of the valley had grown taller once again. Under the sunlight, the rough wall surface still shows wet patches of freshly applied mud, shining with a yellowish-brown glow. Although the work is far from finished, this visible progress makes Ilya smile with satisfaction. "Lord, Master has returned." At the city gate, the security officer on duty saw the distinctive figure with white hair from afar and immediately bowed respectfully, filled with admiration. Ilya casually waved his hand, and the soldiers quickly pushed the heavy gate hinges together. With a creaking sound, the iron-bound wooden door slowly opened inward. Passing through the busy camp, Ilya headed straight to the Lord's fortress. He pushed open the heavy wooden door of the study. Ella was facing away from him, busy working at the desk. Hearing the noise, she suddenly turned around. "Ilya!" Ella's purple eyes lit up instantly as she hurried to meet him. She carefully examined him, as if trying to confirm he was unharmed. Until she saw no injuries on him, and that he looked calm as usual, the faint worry in her eyes quietly disappeared. "How was it? Did you see Her Highness the Princess? What is she like?" She paused, scanning around behind Ilya with a curious look. "Huh? Gulu? Didn't come back with you?" Seeing Ella's concerned and curious face, Ilya felt a warm flicker in his heart. He deliberately spoke in a very calm tone. "Oh, that noisy groundhog. Too loud. I roasted and ate it halfway here." Ella was stunned at first, then reacted quickly, clenched her small fist, and punched Ilya in the chest. "You're teasing me again. I'll hit you. Tell me, where did Gulu go?" Ilya was about to grab Ella's wrist and tease her a little more when suddenly, a sharp knocking interrupted the brief warmth in the study. "Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock." Ilya released Ella's hand and said loudly, "Come in." The door was pushed open, revealing a dusty and hurried EST. Behind him followed two familiar figures. Karen, the manager of the North Trade Guild, and Pierre. "Young master, Manager Karen and Manager Pierre have arrived." S stepped aside to let them in. As soon as Karen entered, he immediately put on his typical enthusiastic merchant smile and bowed deeply to Ilya. "Honorable Baron Pendragon. Good day. Please forgive our sudden intrusion," followed by open admiration and flattery. "Oh my, how much time has passed. Your territory is changing so quickly. This city wall. Impressive. So strong and grand. Even the outer wall of Thorn City is not as sturdy, right? Baron, your leadership is truly remarkable. Pierre quickly bowed and agreed from the side. Yes, yes. Clerk Karen is right. Your skills as a noble are truly admirable. Eli did not speak, but looked calmly at Karen with his blue eyes. The invisible pressure made Karen's smile stiffen slightly. Save the pleasantries. Just get to the main point. Karen immediately stopped smiling. Understood, sir. So, our trading caravan recently traveled south and happened to meet your agent, Master Dast, who was heading to Thorn City for trade. Master Dast was carrying a large amount of animal hides, teeth, and claws, quite a lot. When we saw it was the Baron's goods, we didn't hesitate. We exchanged them for supplies like grain, salt, and iron, as you requested. The trade was completed on the spot. Everything went smoothly. All the exchanged goods have already been sent to Black Ridge and are waiting outside the valley entrance. Master Dast also returned with us and is now counting and unloading the cargo outside. A hint of satisfaction flickered in Eli's eyes. Good work, he nodded slightly, acknowledging North Trade Service. With Eli's approval, Karen and Pierre relaxed and their smiles returned. It's our honor to serve the Baron. Karen rubbed his hands and moved on to the main topic. Additionally, sir, our visit is mainly regarding the population request made by Lady Esther. Eli's gaze sharpened. How many people have you brought? Karen immediately became very careful, carefully raising one finger on his left hand, then quickly extending 5 fingers on his right hand. Sir, this time, a total of 1,500 people, all carefully selected strong and capable workers, just as you requested. Healthy, quick, and reliable, definitely good laborers. He hurried to add, worried Eli might think it was too many. Considering the large number of people, the long journey, and the difficulty in managing, we divided the transport into 2 groups. The first group of 800 people has already arrived outside the valley with us. The second group is still on the way and should arrive in about 3 days. How many do you need? We will arrange the second group's destination accordingly. All of them. These 3 simple words were spoken calmly by Ili again. Karen's smile instantly froze, and his mouth opened slightly. Pierre gasped dramatically, eyes wide with surprise. Again, all of them. Karen's voice trembled with disbelief. He even wondered if he had heard wrong. 1,500 people. That's not just 1,500 copper coins. The cost of escorting slaves and the expenses on the road are astronomical. Could it be that this Baron really found the legendary gold mine underground? Pierre stammered to confirm. My lord, are you sure? That's 1,500 people. I am sure, Ili said calmly, without any change in tone. The first group will stay in the Black Collar Valley for settlement. As for the second group, he paused briefly. Please, your trading caravan, make another effort and deliver them directly to Lucerne City, to Lord Brandon. Tell him these are the workers I am sending, and he can arrange everything. The shock was so great that Karen and Pierre's minds went blank, and they could only nod mechanically. Yes, yes, my lord. We understand. The first group stays in Black Collar, and the second goes to Lucerne City, to Lord Brandon. After the shock, came overwhelming joy. A slave trade involving 1,500 people. This was one of the largest single population transactions in the history of the North Commerce Guild. Karen forced himself to suppress his pounding heart and tried to keep his voice steady. Then he asked, My lord, according to the previous agreed price, per person, considering the longer journey and the large number, our guild has taken on great risk and cost. The total is 1,042 gold coins. But since you are our most important guest, and this is such a large deal, we will give you a small discount, rounded up to 1,000 gold coins. When he announced the number, his voice trembled slightly, and he kept a close eye on Ili, afraid that the other might change his mind or try to lower the price. Ili showed no hesitation. All right, Este, young master. Este immediately stepped forward. Go to the treasury. Ili instinctively wanted to say, ask Steward Sebastian for the funds, but he remembered that the mysterious old steward was still nowhere to be seen. A faint feeling of disappointment crossed his mind, but he quickly changed his words. Follow me. I'll take you there. Karen and Pierre hurriedly bowed. Yes, sir. Soon after, the gold coins had been loaded onto the cart. Karen looked at the full cart and Ili's territory, and a desire to be friends with Ely grew in his mind. He hesitated a little, but finally spoke. Lord Baron, I wonder if you would be willing to hear a humble merchant's advice. Ely's eyes showed curiosity. Oh, go ahead. Karen let out a breath of relief. Sir, this was also our oversight. During the process of allocating slaves, perhaps because of the overwhelming display, he paused, then continued. It attracted the attention of some interested people. Of course, I haven't told anyone else anything about you, but I did sense some eyes on us while I was on the way to Black Territory. Karen stopped himself. Ely frowned and thought deeply. Are you saying I've been too noticeable lately, and that might have attracted some people's attention? Karen hesitated but nodded. Ely, noticing Karen's surprised look, bowed slightly in gratitude. Thank you, my friend. Karen hurriedly stepped back. My lord, this is not necessary, not necessary. The North Merchant Guild's carriage left the Black Territory. Pierre sat on the bumpy floor, still somewhat distracted, his voice dreamy and absent-minded. Karen, another 1,000 gold coins. Just like that. Just hand it over. He wanted to ask, how much does he really have, but thought it was too rude and foolish. Karen leaned against a sack full of goods, coming back from his thoughts, and adopted the deep, sharp look typical of a merchant. He stroked his chin and spoke slowly. Pierre, remember today, Baron Pendragon is very different from others in many ways. Either he has powerful support we can't imagine behind him, or, he paused, lowering his voice further, he controls a river of gold himself. Whatever the case, this person is not someone we can offend, nor someone we can even understand fully. From now on, we must be very careful with the Black Cloak. Make every effort to be friendly. Do you understand? This might be the most profitable deal the North Trade Guild has made in the next 10 or even 20 years. Pierre nodded firmly. For the first time, he felt clearly that a new force was rising unstoppable on this forgotten southwestern border. And our North Trade Guild is very lucky to be riding this wave of change. Ely stood at the edge of the balcony on the second floor of the Lord's fortress. His eyes followed several wagons loaded with heavy boxes of gold coins as they jostled out of the valley. 1,000 gold coins could buy 1,500 mouths to feed and workers to build the territory. It looked like a big loss on paper, but for him, who needed to quickly gather people in the wilderness, population was the most valuable resource. He withdrew his gaze and turned to leave the balcony. Behind the fortress, near the edge of the new residential area, the place was bustling with noise. 800 new slaves, under the command of the slave master Uru and Dast, who had just returned from a trade in Thorn City, were forming a crooked line, somewhat chaotic. Line up, don't push. How many times do I have to tell you? Stand in small groups. 100 people per group. Where are the group leaders? Step forward. Take care of your people. Uru's voice was already a bit hoarse from shouting. This way, this way. Uru the steward, take the 20 group over here. Dast's voice was calmer as he directed a few old slaves, guiding a newly formed team toward a large wooden shelter just built. These shelters are simple, but at least can block the wind and rain, much better than sleeping outside in the wild. Ely didn't disturb them, just stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, watching. Uru and Desai worked well together, and the chaotic scene gradually became orderly. Most of the new slaves looked confused and scared at first, but there were no major disturbances. Finally, when the last small group was led into the wooden shelter area, Uru wiped the sweat from his forehead and let out a long sigh. He turned his head and happened to see a striking figure with white hair at the edge of the crowd. Master, Uru shivered and quickly tugged at Desai, who was still counting people nearby. Desai, hurry. The Lord is coming. They hurried through the crowd and bowed to Ely. Everyone is settled. As usual, 800 people are divided into 8 small teams. Each team has 100 people, and temporary team leaders have been appointed, plus the 17 teams arranged earlier. Now in our Black Obsidian Valley, there are exactly 25 slave teams. He looked proud and respectful, full of emotion. Master, including the knights, soldiers, free citizens, and craftsmen, our valley now has nearly 3,000 mouths to feed. All this is thanks to you. Great Lord, nearly 3,000 people. Ely repeated softly, looking over the lively camp. In just a few months, from a handful of exiles to a gathering of thousands. This should be a proud achievement. However, Uru's heartfelt praise of Great Lord and the large population size before him felt like a tiny thorn, lightly pricking him. He remembered Kalen's wise advice before leaving, full of businesslike sharpness and clear judgment. Master, your actions now might be a bit too obvious. Seeing Ilya not showing his usual approval, Uru's excitement froze. He thought he had said something wrong and looked awkwardly at Desai. Desai, with simpler thoughts, believed Ilya was concerned about supplies and quickly reported, Master, the grain, salt, and iron I brought back from Thorn City have all been unloaded into the warehouse. Lord John has already sent people to take away a batch of iron supplies, claiming it is needed to strengthen the city walls. Lord Hardy also sent some grain to the storage. When I saw the supplies safely stored, a look of relief eased from Ilya's face. He nodded at Dax. Yes, Dax, thank you for your hard work this time. Well done. Dax was praised openly by Ilya. His dark face turned slightly red, and he shyly scratched the back of his head. You're too kind. Actually, it was mainly thanks to Supervisor Karen. He has many contacts and is well-liked. The merchants respect him, and the prices are fair. After the deal, he even invited me to a meal. His voice grew quieter at the end, as if feeling a bit embarrassed. Ilya understood and smiled with a hint of helplessness. That clever Karen. Merchants seek profit, but they also understand the importance of relationships. Karen's friendliness and earlier advice show he's interested in the growing money tree of the Black Leader. His gaze turned again to the camp. A dozen or so children, clearly new slaves, about 6 or 7 years old, gathered shyly yet curiously together. They secretly watched the soldiers on the training ground nearby, wielding swords and spears. Their small faces showed fear, mixed with innocent longing. Seeing this, a vague idea in Ilya's mind became clearer. He turned to Uru and ordered, Uru, organize people to quickly count. Right now, in the entire Black Leader Valley, including slaves, free people, artisans, and soldiers' families, all children under 12 years old. How many are there exactly? Separate the boys and girls, and roughly divide by age. Uru hesitated for a moment, not quite understanding why Ilya wanted to count the children, but he quickly nodded. Yes, sir. I'll arrange for people right away. Ilya nodded and said nothing more. He turned and left the noisy settlement area. He followed the main road inside the camp, slowly heading toward the Lord's fortress. Soldiers, free people, and slaves passing by didn't stop their work, but respectfully saluted him. Ilya only nodded slightly in response. His mind had already drifted far away. Karen's observer's reminder was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples that kept spreading. It's too obvious. He was the first Baron among the pioneering knights. This alone was already breaking the usual rules. He captured Lucerne City, repelled the Beast Tide, and then made 2 large slave trades involving a total of 2,300 people. This was in the already resource-scarce and slowly developing western borderlands. It was as noticeable as a torch in the dark night. The traditional nobles who had hidden behind the defenses and had long controlled the western borderlands. Seeing this exile, Ili Pendragon, thriving on their old territory, what would they think? Would they feel comfortable? They would wonder, where did this Ili Pendragon get his wealth? Black robes, but only occupying a small, barren corner. Lucerne, just a city ranked among the top in the western borderlands. Why could he support such a large population and development costs? Did he really discover something incredible deep in the wilderness? Like some kind of treasure? These suspicions would feel like invisible needles. And the most significant gaze among them undoubtedly came from Sir Lucius La Roche of Thorn City, who held the highest power in the western borderlands. He supported himself partly to plant a stake in the southwest of the borderlands against potential remnants of the Federation, and partly to attract other nobles to invest more in their family's pioneering knights. But a stake that is too strong, too dazzling, even possibly beyond control. Would he really want that? Would Lucius be willing to see his influence grow so rapidly right under his nose? Ili's steps stopped in front of the Lord's fortress stairs. He looked up at the rough stone structure, symbol of power, then turned to look at the lively scene in the valley. A heavy feeling quietly swept over his heart. He was no longer just a pioneering knight trying to survive. On his shoulders, heavily pressing down, were the Black Robes and Lucerne City, the lives and future hopes of nearly 5,000 people. Phew. Ely exhaled slowly. Being conspicuous meant taking risks. Being too obvious often leads to trouble. Kalen is right. At least for now, we must calm down and turn showy into reserved. Be modest. Bide your time. Digest and adapt. Integrate the new population into the territory, turning them into productivity and defense. Strengthen the walls, train the soldiers, cultivate the land, and gather supplies. Silently, deepen and solidify the foundation. Only with strong roots can the branches grow lush, and only then can we stand firm against future storms.